The Three Little Pigs and the Wolf on the Road, written by Dimitri Karas and illustrated by Michael Fuller. Once upon a time, there were 3 little pigs who lived happily together in a house made of brick. One day, the pigs ran out of food. They needed to go to town to buy more. They all knew that the big bad wolf would be out there, and the big bad wolf loved to eat bacon. The 3 pigs agreed that they needed a way to stay safe. The first little pig said,
"I have an idea. I will become a political activist and petition the government to ban bacon."
The first little pig made a Twitter account. He tweeted the town's elders nonstop about how unfair bacon was to pigs, until bacon was finally outlawed. The next day, happy with his new law, the first little pig left to go to town. But the big bad wolf was waiting by the road. When the wolf saw the pig, he said, little pig, come here so I can make tasty bacon out of you." The little pig replied,
"You cannot do that, Mr. Wolf. There is a law against bacon. It is a legal sin. You cannot do that, not by the hair on my chinny chin chin."
"Well," said the wolf, let me think. I know, bacon and pork chops are not technically the same thing." So the big bad wolf bit, and he clawed, and he turned the little pig into a pork chop and ate him for dinner. The second little pig, after seeing what happened to his friend, said,
"I have an idea. We need to make a better law."
So the second pig also became a political activist. He created a Facebook page called Pigs Demand Action.
PDA.
He posted day and night about how unfair it was for wolves to have dangerously sharp teeth. Finally, the village elders made another law, this time making it illegal to have sharp teeth or claws. The next morning, happy with his new law, the second little pig left to go to town. But there again was the big bad wolf waiting by the road. When the wolf saw the pig, he said, little pig, come here so I can eat you for breakfast." The little pig replied,
"You cannot do that, Mr. Wolf. There is a law against you having those sharp teeth and claws. It is illegal. You cannot win. You cannot do that, not by the hair on my chinny chin chin."
"Well," said the wolf, let me think. It seems your law is airtight, but I'm still going to kill you. I am a wolf. I will not be dulling my teeth. Sorry, little pig. I just don't care about your law." So the big bad wolf bit, and he clawed, and he turned the second little pig into savory pork sausage links and ate him for breakfast. The third little pig, after seeing what happened to his friends, said,
"Laws do not seem to stop the wolf. I need to think of something better."
He thought, and he thought, and he finally said,
"I have an idea."
The third little pig went online and ordered all of the things he needed to make a ghost gun. When his package arrived, he worked, and he built an unserialized AR-15 with 30-round standard capacity magazines. The next day, happy with his new rifle, the third little pig left to go to town. But there again was the big bad wolf waiting by the road. When the wolf saw the pig, he said, little pig, come here so I can eat you for lunch." The third little pig replied,
"Not today, Wolf. Eat this instead."
So the third little pig fired round after round of 5.56 steel core into the big bad wolf's face. Even after the wolf was clearly dead, the little pig did not stop shooting. He shot, and he shot, and he yelled,
"Not by the hair on my chinny chin chin."
Hooray!
The third little pig strolled the rest of the way to town. He peacefully purchased his food and returned home, happy that the big bad wolf would never hurt another pig. The end.
Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for our weekly news recap from behind enemy lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized, as is Crowder.
Crowder's a little more than demonetized. He was demonetized a while ago. It's a little more
his
than
channel.
that now.
Yes, his channel's got 2 strikes. Have they got the 3rd one yet? It's on its way.
Not yet.
So alongside me is my co-host and producer, Fox Trevize. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad. Probably not as bad as you are after watching that video. I imagine after seeing that little anecdote, you're probably against ghost guns now and think that we should advocate against them.
Yes, I think that we should definitely disarm the pigs because that is a real threat to our community. You know, they might hurt themselves.
Yes.
They might shoot themselves. I hear suicide's a problem, and we really need to disarm them so they can't hurt themselves.
Yes.
That way, I am free to hurt them for themselves.
Yes, exactly. Wolves are always right.
Exactly. And, you know, you can't blame the wolves because, you know,
They're animals.
we're animals. We can't be held accountable for our decisions, right?
Peacefully turning them into pork sausage.
Yeah. It's a peaceful protest that results in some sausage being made. You know, no one likes to see the sausage being made, but it's a necessary part of society.
Jesus. You're the worst.
Yeah, the worst. So, welcome to our the Dire Wolf birthday show. It's totally 100% honest, not joking around or totally lying to you. Definitely wink, wink, my birthday.
You know, if oh, you guys can't hear me, let me see here. How about now? There you go. I'll be right in your ear there, Triumvirate. All right.
You missed some funny things. You said.
What's that?
Missed some funny things you said.
I feel like if you're gonna make it your birthday stream, we should have also made it a drinking stream, but that's on you. You messed that one up.
Yeah, you know, probably. But it was also like a spur of the moment joke that I mean, totally serious. Absolutely, my birthday. Don't doubt it. Otherwise, you're denying my reality. So,
because as we all know, Dire's real birthday is actually on.
Oh, you muted yourself. Oh, shoot. I guess.
Dire's really bad at improv jokes.
Sorry. If you guys want to support this train wreck, like the likes of Kaylet, Ori Main, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke, Thundra Erican, who's female, White Lion, and Adder Lupus, and also thank you very much to Timberwolf. If you guys want to donate to the show like those individuals and make this show possible, feel free to do so. It's on your conscience, not ours. Also, you can support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing. Spread us around like a disease.
Wow.
Maybe a pandemic.
I was gonna say something, but that whatever you just said just like wiped all of my short-term memory, and I'm horrified. Can we please move on to our first story?
I did sell this story. I started the show as a train wreck, so I mean, it couldn't be any worse.
Yeah. Alrighty. So our what's that?
Truth in advertising.
Yes. All right, so our first story tonight, we already did our funny video, which was the Three Little Pigs learning about the Second Amendment, which I thought was that is a real book. It is I think Firearms Unlimited is the channel. Let me see here. Yes, our Firearms Unknown is the YouTube channel that made that, and that book is real. I recommend that you go subscribe to them and buy that book for any of the children in your lives that need to learn good lessons for life. Let's see here. Okay, so our first story then is I don't know if you guys know this. Dire, you might not know this, but actually, contrary to popular belief, Joe Biden is the most inspirational speaker and driver of our time. Do you believe me?
Because I've been following social media this week, I'm gonna go with no.
Well, I don't. You don't need to take my word for it, Dire. Let's take Joe Biden's word for it.
I can only assume that you will enjoy educating your family about how the Coast Guard is, quote, the hard nucleus around the Navy forms in times of war.
So that was Joe Biden talking to the Coast Guard graduating class this past week, and as you'll see as we continue to watch here, that was a doozy of a line there. I'm not really sure what he said, so I can't really blame anybody else in the crowd for not knowing what he said. But let's continue watching after that stunning, beautiful, brave one-liner that Joe Biden just tossed in there. Let's see what the reaction from the crowd was.
You're a really dull class.
Oh, swing and a miss.
Come on, man. Is the sun getting to you? I would think you'd have an opportunity when I say that about the Navy to clap, but being here together.
That's how you know your jokes are really landing, is when you have to yell at the people for not laughing, and then you have to tell them to clap for it after you've already told them that they're stupid for not laughing at it.
If they don't get the joke, it's so much worse to point out that they didn't get the joke and then to ask for applause. It is 10 times worse.
No,
just move on.
Yeah, no, this isn't the first time. So Biden's, just sitting there stumbling over his words, fighting with the teleprompter, as it's been called, and then you got all these Coast Guard guys are sitting there. They probably don't want to be out there. And probably the last thing they want to do on their graduation day is sit out in the hot sun and listen to Biden not be able to form a coherent sentence. But then he sits there and calls them a dull bunch because they didn't clap for him. They weren't his clapping seals, because that's what our military is for, is to form parades and clap for the dear leader no matter what he does, as we know in our American democracy here. But this is not the first time that Joe has disparaged the troops for not laughing at his unfunny jokes. We will continue watching this clip. This is a clip.
Unfunny and plagiarized.
Yes.
Sorry.
So the plagiarism too. So we're Hannity put together a nice segment here for about another minute, and we'll watch that, and then we'll comment on it after. But yes, plagiarism and further history of Joe Biden calling the troops stupid.
Well, all kidding aside, being here together is a victory in and of itself.
We did get the signature. Come on, man. Now we know why his team orders him not to take questions. And true to form, Biden's attempted joke was not an original, but unlike Joe, President Ronald Reagan, about the same age as Joe at that time in his presidency, he could actually deliver a punchline. For comparison, let's just take a look at President Reagan and Biden back to back. We'll let you decide if you see a difference.
My Coast Guard aides have been excellent. One of them taught me that, and I quote, "The Coast Guard is that hard nucleus about which the Navy forms in time of war."
I can only assume that you will enjoy educating your family about how the Coast Guard is, quote, "the hard nucleus around the Navy forms in times of war." You're a really dull class. I mean, come on,
it's not
man.
their fault that you couldn't get the words out, right?
Yeah, I mean, first off, you're plagiarizing it, and then second off, you're not able to even deliver what you're plagiarizing.
I'm not sure which was worse, the fact that you're plagiarizing it or the fact you can't even deliver it the same.
You know Biden was the one who wanted that added into the speech. The speechwriters were like, okay, look, we can't do that. It's you already have. You guys know this. Biden ran for president in the 90s, and he had to drop out because he plagiarized his speeches. It was caught, and back then we had a media that would call him out on it. And the DNC said, nope, we can't move forward with you. We can't have a plagiarist in office. They're never going to win.
Only that, he also lied about his history and got caught. Do you remember that he said his grandfather was a coal miner, and people looked into it, and like his grandfather was like a technician of sorts that had nothing to do with mining coal, never mined coal in his life.
To give you guys a perspective on how long Joe Biden's been in office, he's been in office for so long that he's able to use lies that he's previously been caught on, and it's been so long, no one remembers.
Yeah, in a speech this week, he repeated the lie that his grandfather was a coal miner in Scranton. Never happened. He repeated it again in a speech this week.
Yeah, let's continue watching.
Come on, man, you're a dull president that could barely string a few sentences together. Piece of advice, Joey. Stop insulting our soldiers when they don't laugh at your terrible jokes. You might remember this.
And I want you to know, notwithstanding what you may hear about me, I have incredibly good judgment. One, I married Jill. And two, I appointed Johnson to the academy. I just want you to know that. Let's clap for that. Man, you are must be.
He's got that dull bunch there again. That's his go-to line when he's talking to the troops. You know, Dyer, I was thinking the other day, I think there's a reason why Joe Biden thinks that regular troops, regular soldiers are a dull bunch. Can you guess why?
I'm thinking it's because elitists like him think that only stupid people without degrees or any kind of like real education join the military, and that they're the pawns that elitists like him throw around to make millions of dollars through the military industrial complex. But what is it in your mind, Fox?
Well, it could be that. It could be that. I think that it's more likely that he thinks that regular military personnel are dull is because his experience with military personnel is Hunter Biden smoking meth, and you know it's hard to be dull when you're high on meth. You got a lot of pep in your step, a lot of energy, a lot of extra excitement in your life. Definitely not dull. And so when Joe Biden sees a bunch of regular soldiers who aren't high on meth, they seem a little dull.
Yeah,
not quite the life of the party.
I think he just has a low respect for the military in general, and that's why it's so easy for him to throw out stupid bastards or dull bunch, because he has no reverence for, the service. I think he looks down on them as being the undereducated people who are forced to do this instead of actually something of value to him.
Well, they are of value to him, except for when they don't clap for him.
Sorry, I meant like something he doesn't see what they're doing as being valuable, other than their ability to sacrifice for his bottom line.
Exactly. So,
I want to also point out, so on the topic of the most recent video of him calling the Coast Guard a dull bunch. So usually for the retirement class, the class will do some parade work. Well, they'll march around and show off their ability to do formation marching. And then they'd be standing in the sun for a long period of time. And particularly when you're waiting for the president, usually you get there way early in case he gets there early. And he's usually late. So you end up being there for quite a long time waiting for the president to arrive and then give a speech. They might have been standing out there for hours in the hot sun. And I mean, it's not comfortable sitting at attention or even parade rest for hours. I know at my graduation class, the soles of our shoes were getting so hot that some people they were getting it was burning our feet. It's so hot.
You guys in your damn shoes.
The shoes. It's the same shoes I was complaining about before. By the way, they just suck in general.
The military dress shoes are apparently very subpar.
They are.
They put all their money into the missiles.
They heat up easily after 6.
How dare you?
Why would you do that?
Thank you, Slowpoke. Slowpoke us a copy pasta, which is nearly unpronounceable, and I appreciate the $2. Thank you, guys.
I appreciate it. And after 6 years, they just dissolve. The rubber just evaporates. And my pair evaporated while I was walking in my my dress uniform to an event. So from the car to the event, I had 0 soles left.
You poor soul. Hey there, Adelupus. How's it going? All right, so Dyer, cover for me. I need to take a drink.
Okay. So obviously, I think that Biden's not the only one in the Democrat Party that derides or looks down on the military. I think it's the reason why those phrases come to him so easily is because that's what he really thinks. When Reagan said it, he made a funny joke. He had good delivery, but Biden he barely can get the words out, and it wasn't funny. You can't blame
Reagan's thing wasn't an insult though. Like Reagan was delivering them like a compliment,
right?
And then Joe Biden was attempting to plagiarize that, and then just insulted them instead.
Yeah, he badly stated the compliment to the point where it wasn't clear whether it was a compliment or not. And then he got mad at them and called them dull because they didn't get the joke he failed to deliver.
Yes. So, speaking correctly and forming complete sentences is not the only thing Joe Biden can't do. Apparently he is not able to drive. So we have this story this week, which
Nazi fags.
How dare you?
Jews in the.
Why would you do that?
Let's see here. Slowpoke gave us another $2. He would like to make children with somebody. He wants to love lots and never be separated, and I missed the rest of it. Let me pull up. So there is some context for us to why there's a blurry picture of Joe Biden and Putin on a horse. Need to pull up this video here. All right, so you guys might have seen this video from earlier this week, but if you haven't, let's take a watch here. This is Joe Biden driving one of Ford's brand new all-electric pickup trucks.
That first shot you see is not Joe Biden.
Oh. Well, don't spoil the story there, Dyer, because it certainly looks like Joe Biden's driving. You wouldn't, not believe your lying eyes there, Dyer.
Mr. President!
This sucker's quick.
How's it drive?
How does it feel? Would you buy one of these?
I would.
How does it feel to be behind the wheel, sir?
It feels great. I tell you what, these electric vehicles. Now, I don't know if anybody has a stopwatch, but I think if we're going 0 to 60 in about 4.3. 4.4? Right.
Look how natural that camera angle is.
Look who's in the mirror. Look at the little
Mr. President, how
mirror.
fast were you going?
Well, okay, I'm just going to step on it. I'll come off at 80 miles an hour. You'll see what it is, okay? You ready?
Mr. President, can I ask you a quick question on Israel before you drive away?
No, you
since
can't.
It's so important?
Not unless you get in front of the car as I step on it.
Hold on a second. We're going to go back
Come
to
off.
that. So one of the reporters just asked him, hey, can I ask you a question about Israel? And Joe Biden said, no, not unless you get in front of the truck while I step on it. Is he joking? Yes. Is it funny? It's kind of funny. If Trump had done that, would the media they would have impeached him again.
They would have no sense of humor about it.
They would have absolutely impeached him again.
I want to point out in the side view mirror, you can clearly see the guy's face of who's actually driving.
Well, no, that's just somebody in the passenger seat. That doesn't prove that he's driving. You can't see the steering wheel of that. We'll get the steering wheel picture in a second here. I've got your whole tweet thread up here, so we'll go through it. Hold on.
You'll see what it is, okay? You ready?
Mr. President, can I ask you a quick question on Israel before you drive
No,
away?
you
Since
can't.
it's so important?
Not unless you get in front of the car as I step on it. I'm only teasing. Okay, here we go. You ready?
See it, sir.
Ready?
Okay, so media very, very excited watching Joe Biden, kind of cackling, a little bit of squealing there. Very excited that Joe Biden was taking off at 88 miles an hour. You know what's funny is if Joe Biden actually did hit 88 miles an hour, it's still not fast enough to send him back to before he was already in elected office. Joe Biden was in elected office for longer than the time jump in Back to the Future. He's like the principal. He's just always been there. Okay, so as Dyer was alluding to, Joe Biden was not actually driving this pickup here. So the screenshots Dyer took in his Twitter profile suck. So I got some closer up ones here. So if you look at this picture that we've got up here, and the reason why I've got a picture of Putin riding a horse is because I think it highlights an issue when our leader is unable to drive a truck and our enemy's leader is able to ride a horse all by himself. So if you look in the picture here on the right, you'll see the 2 arrows, and you see Joe Biden's got his steering wheel. And then if you look over on the passenger side, it's another steering wheel. My goodness. So the reason for this is not really that nefarious. So there's a longstanding rule that the president is not to drive himself at all, which is perfectly fine. It's completely understandable why the president shouldn't be driving a car, and that's fine. It's been a thing for a long time, many decades now. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's perfectly understandable, reasonable. That's fine. So that's why Joe Biden's not actually the one driving the truck. The thing that's funny, a little creepy here, is that they're pretending that he's driving the truck, even though they know he's not. Joe Biden's sitting there playing with the steering wheel like Dyer's kid in the back seat with the little toy car steering wheel, pretending like he's driving the truck. And then you've got the media who they know what's going on, but they're also pretending that Joe Biden is really driving the truck. And you saw the weird camera angle that CNN had. That clip that we watched was from CNN's camera. They were pulled as far back as they could so that you couldn't really see the passenger seat, because if they had just gone up to the window head on, you'd have been able to see, well, there's 2 steering wheels in the car. So it's not a conspiracy theory that, oh, Joe Biden, he wasn't really driving the car and black helicopters. No, it's not a conspiracy. It's just a fact. Joe Biden was absolutely not driving that car. And again, that's not a problem. I don't care that he just wasn't driving the car. It's just really, really weird that they put so much effort into pretending that he was driving the car.
Yes, and also you can also see that even his steering wheel is not actually being used to steer the car, because when he's turning it before it pulls forward, and it pulls forward straight, but he turns the wheel, which would have made it turn to the right. Mm-hmm. It didn't actually turn right. His steering wheel is not guiding the vehicle. It is totally the guy on the right side doing it. So it would have been totally fine if they'd been honest. It wouldn't have been a story. The story isn't that he wasn't allowed to drive the vehicle, or he wasn't driving the vehicle. The story is that they decided to lie about it, and it's for them, for the media, for the administration, creating a false narrative and lying is so frequent and so easy. It's like breathing for them.
Exactly. So this is something where it's a completely unnecessary to lie. So this kind of behavior that you see with pathological liars, like people who lie out of a deep need to lie.
Thank you, honey.
Hillary Clinton actually has this. A lot of people have pointed this out.
What's that?
Okay. I watched that, man.
Yeah, what do you think of that video?
Oh my god, that's so stupid.
What do you think it makes America look like?
So weak.
Yeah.
He can't even drive that car. Somebody drive the car for him.
Apparently, the president's not allowed to drive his own vehicle, but they could have just been honest about it, but they decided to lie.
They shoot it from the side so that people cannot see.
Yeah. Sorry, that's my wife.
Seeing right through everything. See here. Catman sent us a ice cream, I think. Yes, he did. And he also sent us a cat. Thank you very much. Hi, Infidel. Hi. Daychrist is over on YouTube. How you doing, Daychrist? Haven't seen you in a while. Hope everybody's having a great night. But so... Again, this is an example of pathological lying. So Biden has actually this to a certain extent too, where like Dyer was saying earlier, he will recurringly lie about things over and over and over again, even though they've already been debunked and everybody knows that they're not true, and he will keep saying them. And the media will continue covering on his behalf, at least in the modern era. They didn't used to. And so this is a really weird example where it's something so irrelevant. It doesn't matter if he was driving or not, because as we just said, it's a known rule that the president's not allowed to drive. But so if they just let it go as like, oh, Joe Biden's just a passenger in this electric vehicle, everybody would have been like, okay, that's fine. It's perfectly normal. There's no story here. But the media purposefully tried to create this narrative that Joe Biden pretending that he was driving. And it's this is the kind of thing that you see in North Korea, And a lot of other places where you have a dictatorial control over the government, where the media exists to create this kind of mythos, this legend about the leader. Actually, Putin himself has this happen, where Russian media will create these overblown narratives, painting him as this, real crazy strongman, legend, hero type character. Now, that's not to say that, obviously Putin can ride a horse, so I don't know what else he can do for real, but the media in Russia will certainly gin up the legend of him being a strongman. The media will attempt to do that with Joe Biden, even though there's only so much you can build on top of that. And it's just, I wonder what else. What else are they lying about here? And just in the future, what else are they going to try to cover up for Joe? Obviously, we know over the last year, and we got a bunch of other stories coming up here tonight about the media lying all last year about COVID. Oh, man, who could have seen that coming? And it's at a certain point, so obviously it's bad that the media is lying. I don't think that's news to anybody. I'm not saying anything profound here, but at a certain point, and I think that we're hitting it, is that the media does suddenly become a propaganda branch of the authoritarian government in power, which is a much, much bigger problem than just the fake news of the last 4 years.
Yeah, and when you see these blatant lies that slip through, and are caught fairly often, we can catch CNN on a regular basis, setting up fake shots, publishing stories with facts that we can easily prove are false. But when we see it so often, it's hard to really capture how much of their broadcasting is even truth, right? And they're trying to create an entire world view based on all these falsehoods. And there are people who watch their content and have a vastly different view of the world based on this mythos. And those people could be broken for the rest of their lives because they have so much of history that they've learned is being wrong. And that's one of the goals of having the news broadcasting. First, putting out the fake stories, and then we have social media and internet companies preventing counter information from being viewed. Is they're essentially creating false history that will be if you try to search for information later on, that's all you'll find, and they'll just become the fact a generation from now, right? It's very dangerous, and it's. I don't know how we can combat it other than doing what we're doing and trying to somehow save the counter arguments, right? Save the real history.
Adder Lupus gave us a diamond that I missed a little bit ago. He says, a diamond to represent what a good mood I'm in. Well, I'm glad you're in a good mood. So, yeah, I mean, and we've got, this is, what's funny about this is the media is becoming more and more cliche in their propagandizing. So what we have here is an example of framing. Literally CNN framed their camera shot as to create a narrative. And you can kind of see in this where it's the literal, if you've ever kind of wondered, what does framing really mean? You always hear about it in kind of the abstract context. Well, this is an example of concrete framing where there's reality going on in front of the camera, and the camera is purposefully adjusted so that you're only capturing a certain part of the reality, and thus you can create a narrative around it. That's what framing is. And just to see it so blatantly is... that's pretty wild.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty good metaphor for his presidency, though. As same way he wasn't driving this car, and
it's a metaphor for how yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great one. And it's a metaphor for how the media is going to cover it. He wasn't driving the car, he wasn't driving the country, and the media framing it to look like it's both. I'm also remembering too a few weeks ago when Joe Biden was tripping up the stairs, which, that's not the best thing for the president of the U.S. to be tripping 3 times on a flight of stairs. But then you had the media come out and say, well, it was really windy that day. It was really? It was so windy that he fell down the stairs and not
up the stairs.
Yeah, like, and all of the Marines around him in their dress uniforms didn't have their tails flapping in the air at all. Are you sure it was windy? There was visible signs of it not being windy.
But Fox, if you search, did Biden get blown over by wind on the stairs up to up to Air Force One? Every story you see will say he was.
Yeah. All right. So I kind of one of the last things I'll leave us off with is we're gonna get back to an update on what's going on in Israel, and part of this clip, part of the reason why this clip even came to the surface and came to virality at all is because of the joke Biden made about, he would only answer a question about Israel if he could run over the reporter. So, I mean, Joe Biden, joking or not, would rather kill a reporter than answer questions about Israel, which, I mean, that sounds about right based off of what they're doing in Israel. And we're going to be talking a lot more about that later in the show. But I found that to be maybe not the joke you want to be making, is that you would rather kill a reporter than answer a question about Israel.
I think it's just too honest.
Yes, it is. It is perhaps a moment of honesty in a sea of lies. All right, so our next story
is Space Force takes its first casualties. Woke military are pansies.
Wow, you definitely could have written the title. I just put a just run-on sentence of all the things I wanted you to write about. Great job. Great job.
But both those things are in the story.
Okay.
So last week, there was possibly the most high-profile and most highly publicized casualty in the military's losing war against critical theory or wokeism. As we discussed before, the Democrats' efforts to turn the U.S. military woke starts at the top, with Biden appointing ideological radicals to the top brass, both in the civilian and top military positions. These leaders, both civilian and military, that are appointed by the admin, then enforce these woke policies to the commanders below them. It's like a trickle-down effect. The goal is to have leaders at all levels punish their subordinates if they don't conform to the new dogma.
The casualty that Dyer spoke of was Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeyer, who were the commander of the 11th Space Warning Squadron at Buckley Air Force Base in Colorado. He was removed from command of his squadron last week after he spoke out against Marxism. He spoke out against an ideology that killed 300 million people in the last 100 years. And also critical race theory. Wow, so he spoke out against a genocidal ideology and racism. Jesus Christ. He spoke out against these things during a podcast interview. His comments were in relation to his self-published book, The Irresponsible Revolution, Marxism's Goal of Conquest and the Unmaking of the American Military. That sounds like an interesting book. I will probably try and see if I can find a copy of that and read it. A DOD spokesperson, Dyer, stated that Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeyer was relieved of command by Space Operations Command Commander Lieutenant General Stephen Whiting, man, these names, due to a, quote, loss of trust and confidence in his ability to lead. Apparently, if you speak out against genocide and racism, you've lost the confidence of General Stephen Whiting.
That is actually a canned statement as a general justification for removing someone of his rank from a position, and that wording was intentional to meet the legal requirement. Sorry, continue.
So what you're saying is that they're just going through the motions just to get rid of him for any reason.
As an example, that's the exact word for word reasoning for why they removed the Navy captain who pulled back.
That doesn't. No. You don't. No. Whiting doesn't get to say, "Oh well, I just gave out a standard media." Nope. He signed his name to it. That is him. Stephen Whiting supports Marxism, and he does not trust anybody who doesn't also support Marxism and racism.
Though that's true, he's also being cowardly and using the legal, cookie cutter explanation for why I removed someone instead of actually saying the real thing.
But it doesn't, like, when they're like looking back on your like if you were going to like a military tribunal trial, right? So like if they looked at something that you wrote and you were like, oh, well, like, I didn't really write that. That's just like the standard thing. They're like, no, you signed your name on it. It says Direwolf right there. Like, you signed your name next to the statement. I don't care if it's a cookie cutter response. Like, that's you saying that. So, no, he doesn't get to. I understand what you're saying, Dyer, that's
I'm not giving him an out. I'm just explaining that he's
well,
being
I know. I'm trying to explain to the audience that that's not you giving him an out. That he is Whiting, Lieutenant General Whiting, supports Marxism and racism, and he does not have confidence in any of his soldiers that do not, or guardians, that do not also support genocide and racism. That's the only thing to take from this.
Yes.
And if Whiting didn't do that, if he doesn't support those things, then he lied on an official government document. And what is the punishment for lying on official government documents in the military?
It varies, but you could definitely, depending on what they are, get jail time, and if nothing else, you can get removed from your position.
Okay, so either Whiting lied on military official government documents and Dyer just laid out the punishment, or he supports genocide and racism, so much so that he doesn't have confidence in other soldiers and guardians that don't also support racism and genocide. So that's the only two ways to take this. And the decision. So Whiting continues that the decision was based on, quote, public comments made by Lieutenant Colonel Lomier in a recent podcast. Specifically, and this is important, they said that Lieutenant Colonel Lomier violated policy prohibiting, quote, partisan political activity.
So here's what he actually said. Now, I think I've distilled it down fairly to all the points he made. That not a whole lot more was said other than what I'm going to say here. He said that, in quotes, our diversity, inclusion, and equity industry and the trainings we're provided in the military via that industry are rooted in critical race theory, which is rooted in Marxism. Factual statement. Not politically biased, not talking about party. He went on to say, the reason I say that is because critical race theory and Marxism are antithetical to American values, not Democrat or conservative values, not GOP. He said American values. He also added that critical race theory fuels narratives that attack Americans' founding documents. He also criticized the Pentagon press secretary John Kirby, but did not do so by name. He said press secretary. He criticized him for claiming that there was too many white pilots in the Air Force and Space Force. So he criticized an unnamed official for saying something clearly racist. He then said he criticized the New York Times' attempt to rewrite American history, otherwise known as the 1619 Project, saying that it taught anti-Americanism, because it does. It is, and I just want to point out, I know we've said this to nauseum, but the 1619 Project is a completely false retelling, a fictitious telling of American history with the intent of maligning America and calling it racist.
It's so fictitious that the original author of it attempted to use the project recently to gain tenure in a historical department at a university, and was denied tenure because the project that she worked on was not actually history. It was made up. Maybe she should have gotten. Maybe she
and
should
that's
have gone
not
to
cancel culture.
Yeah, maybe she should have tried the English department, the creative writing area. Okay, so in short, Lomier stated that Marxist ideas were being circulated through American society, true, and that they were being posed on the military, true. He did not make any statement in favor or against any political party. He maintains that his book was non-political. Non-political? Well, maybe you should have wrote that down, Dyer. Lovier said, quote, "I don't believe I was being partisan. It is not politically partisan to expose or attack critical race theory or Marxism." So a little bit of a breakdown on this. Dyer, do you go into at all what the origin of critical race theory is and why it is Marxist?
Please go into
Okay.
it. Please.
So there's been some debate about this the last few weeks where the left has been trying to play this game that critical race theory is not Marxist. And it's just not true. So critical race theory is a outgrowth of critical theory. Where did critical theory come from? Critical theory came from the Frankfurt School in the 1930s. What is actually, I think it might have been like the late 1800s. But anyways, the Frankfurt School, what was the Frankfurt School? Well, the Frankfurt School, it's easier to tell you what the Frankfurt School called itself prior to changing its name to the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School prior to calling itself the Frankfurt School was calling itself the Marxist School. It was a school that was learning about Marx and his teachings. So the Frankfurt School is explicitly a group that was studying and creating Marxism. A lot of the philosophies that Marxist dictatorships would use throughout the 19th or the 20th century to genocide hundreds of millions of people. Those ideas and the papers that they came from and the books and the writings and the teachings came out of the Frankfurt School. So Marx originated the idea of Marxism. Frankfurt School perfected the idea and turned it into something that could be implemented. They codified it. So again, one of the things they codified was critical theory, and it was one of the reasons why they decided to go forward with that was because something Marx said was that essentially, I can't remember the exact quote, but it was essentially that we should be critical of everything in the Western world. And basically it was, the Western world's come to so much power, and if anything has power, you should be critical of it. That is a core tenet of Marxism, is being critical, whether it makes sense or not, against anybody that's in power. And so from that, the Frankfurt School codified that into critical theory, which is just the idea that, anything that is pre-existing, that is a power structure, it is inherently wrong and should be criticized just because it's in power, not for any particular reason. You don't need to, as is common in Marxism, you don't need to bother yourself with thinking about it critically. All you need to do is criticize it.
Included in that theory is that the people in power are always the oppressor, and the people not in power are always the oppressed, and that you start from that assumption, and then you try to find data showing it.
Yes. And so a more recent kind of conversion of critical theory, a piece of it that broke off was critical race theory. So critical race theory has grown to popularity over the last few decades, and that it posits kind of a similar thing to critical theory, where it's any power structure that is in power is worthy of criticism merely because it's in power. Critical race theory turns that to a racial lens and says that any race that is in power is inherently worthy of criticism simply because they're in power. And then that leads you into certain paradoxes where, there might be some white people in government, but I'm not in government. Not all white people are in government. There might be some Jews that run some media companies, but there's also a bunch that don't. There might be some black people that are CEOs, and there's some that aren't. So that's one of the problems with critical race theory, is that it immediately falls apart. Critical theory in general, it at least is able to more precisely target who Marxist enemies are. The power structures, but critical race theory is not only is it extremely racist, it's also bad at implementing Marxism, but that doesn't mean it didn't come from Marxism.
Yeah, it does have in the short term, to any activist seeing this, it helps to encourage the takeover of a system. If an activist sees it as like their ability, their avenue for getting power, by tearing down what's there so they can get into power. But what actually happens, the end goal of critical theory, is whoever gets in power is now the oppressor, and ends up being this constant power struggle, tearing apart society and destroying a capitalist system. Just destroying society. That is the end goal.
Yes.
So it can be replaced by a Marxist, communist country.
Yeah. And I didn't do any prep for the show on that explanation about the linkage back to the Frankfurt School. And even if I had, I mean, that's something that we could do probably a couple of hours on. So that's something I encourage.
We've done it before, haven't we?
Yeah. I mean, I probably, but not recently. But I would encourage you guys, especially because this is an argument that's probably going to come up a lot. So, if you find yourself in the position of, having to argue back and forth with somebody who's a leftist, you're probably just doomed to failure anyways, because they aren't able to hear what you're saying.
Or critically think.
But just for your own sanity, if you are hearing the argument, and you're going to be seeing this because we already started to see it a lot the last few weeks. We saw it a lot in the media this week in relation to this story specifically. The media saying that critical race theory has nothing to do with Marxism. You're going to see that more and more and more. Look up, where did critical race theory come from? It came from critical theory. Where did critical theory come from? It came from the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School is the thing that you need to type into Google, probably DuckDuckGo, and that's the thing that you need to research is what all came out of that. And you'll see very quickly the Frankfurt School is not just tangentially linked to Marxism. It was itself specifically dedicated to Marxism. It was kind of the, in Christianity, you got, Jesus was the guy, and the Catholic Church is the thing that tells everybody about him. In Marxism, you got Marx was the guy, and the Frankfurt School is the church, essentially, that tells everybody about him. So that is what you guys would have to go out and research, but that is the avenue that you can go for how to combat that lie that is gaining a lot more traction, a lot more popularity, that, critical theory has nothing to do with Marxism. It's just not true. And Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeier here very smartly identified that. And the reason why this is important is because they are using the new terminology of critical race theory to launder Marxist ideas into places where if you said, hey, we have this new Marxist theory we want to implement here, everybody's going to say no. If you instead launder it through new language saying, well, it's critical race theory, it's diversity training, it's such and such and such. Well, now you can kind of slip it past some places where normally you wouldn't be able to get Marxist ideas in. And Lohmeier here is seeing right through that and writing a warning to the rest of us and to the rest of the military that, hey, we are being infiltrated. We need to stop. Here's how to identify the people infiltrating us. Here's the magic words they use. And here's how those words link to each other and how they, here's all the history on it. Very smartly identifying that. And, to prove that Marxism isn't a problem, a Marxist ousted him from the military. So, oof.
Yeah. Now, Frankfurt, we're talking about Frankfurt, Germany, right?
I know it's called the Frankfurt School. I think it was based out of Germany, but the Frankfurt School was a group. It was an organization.
Okay, it would be funny if it was just yet another bad idea that came out of Germany.
No, I mean, Marx was from Germany, and the groups that originated it were from Germany. That's you're still correct. I just it's called there's Frankfurt the city, and then there's also the Frankfurt School. So
right.
But yes, no, it is. You're right. I don't want to say that you're wrong because you're definitely right. It is another bad idea and a series of bad ideas that also came from Germany.
You're analyzing and you're right, but I was just trying to point out that nothing good has ever come out of Germany.
Funny, we have another story later today about Germany being awful, and top 10 reasons why we should have just finished them off.
I mean, would the world have been better if they'd been glassed? Question we'll have to think about. So back to this story about Lohmeier, though. By the way, I think it's funny that the most recent picture for him was when he was a captain 6 years ago. All right. He's a lieutenant colonel. That's a captain rank on that guy's collar there. So military personnel are not, I repeat, not restricted from making political statements in general, even in uniform. I know you are surprised to hear that because you have heard us say that military personnel who have made public political statements before were wrong. we criticize those previous statements because they were made by individuals without approval of the military organization and because their statements did not reflect the values of the military branch they belonged to or the DoD. The military,
because they were doing it in uniform, right?
Right. Yeah. So you can make a political statement that is in line with the DoD or their Air Force or your branch. If you're repeating their policy, which might be political in nature, you are not violating. But usually, to make sure that your political statement is in line with their policy, you should go to the Public Affairs Office and have it, reviewed to make sure what you're about to say is authorized, right? But it doesn't mean that no political statement. It means your political statement needs to be exactly in line with your leadership's policy. So an example would be, I cannot tell you in association with the military, wearing my uniform or outside the uniform, but like in some way showing that I'm associated to the military. I cannot tell you to vote for Trump or not to vote for Trump, because then I'm making it look like the Air Force or the military is making a statement about voting for Trump, right? But I can tell you that the Air Force or the Army or Navy or whatever wants to recruit people from a diverse background with diverse perspectives and cultures, because even though they're going to need to adapt to the military culture and core values, their differing perspectives are valuable to the military force. That statement I made is political, saying that they're trying to recruit a diverse group of people. I could even expand on that and say race, gender, age, and all that is official DoD policy. Thus, that political statement is authorized, right? And if I was in question of whether or not it was authorized, I could go to the Public Affairs Office and they can tell me it's authorized or not. And that's what he did. Before publishing his book, he went to PA and ensured that what he was publishing was authorized.
What's PA?
And it's Public Affairs. What did I say?
You said PA. Don't use acronyms.
Yeah.
We don't know what they mean.
Oh, Public Affairs.
Okay, thank you.
So they went to Public Affairs, got his book authorized before publishing. So they have given their sign of approval that the things in his book were okay for him to publish. Which publishing is a form of speech, right? So it would transfer that he is then allowed to say the things in said book, right?
Yes. Lieutenant Colonel Guardian Lomir says that he went through the official channels, as Dyer just described, and had his book approved by Public Affairs before publishing. Dyer has done this process before. It's long and annoying. And for some reason, he wrote it in the first person, even though he knew I was going to read that, and I'm not in the military, and I never done it before. Let's see here. So Lomir's statements were likely drawn directly from the text of his book as he was explaining its context or contents. So the Space Force has a major problem on their hands if they fire somebody for making statements that they were authorized to make. That's going to be very, very confusing very, very quickly for everybody involved. The Space Force, to justify their case, would also have to argue that Marxism and critical race theory and uniquely Democrat ideas are uniquely Democrat ideas.
For it to be partisan.
For it to be partisan, yes. That is a great point. Yeah, so I guess, yeah, that is interesting, right? So similar to what I was saying earlier, like the logical consequences of the guy that fired him saying that he didn't have trust in Lomir, the logical consequences of that is that either he was lying and he lied on an official document, or he eminently supports genocide and racism, and he doesn't have confidence in soldiers that don't also support genocide and racism. Similarly here, the logical consequence of saying that Lomir was being political because he opposed Marxism and critical race theory is to imply that Marxism and critical race theory are specifically DNC platform ideas, that these are part of the Democrat Party. These are their mainstream platform. I'm not saying that it's not, DNC ideas.
I actually think it might be.
But
I might agree with the general here.
But that's kind of that's pretty big mission for Space Force to say, hey, it is the official Space Force position that the Democrats are actually Marxists and are racists. I mean, I don't disagree here. So I guess the problem here is I'm actually kind of more and more in agreement with Space Force's position. I'm just not in agreement with how they are choosing to react to that position. They seem to be in support of the racist Marxist Democrats and not opposing them. But we can at least all find common ground on agreeing that the Democrats are racist and Marxists.
I mean, yeah, so General Whitney is not wrong.
Yes. Okay, so the third thing at point here is that Space Force is inherently arguing that Lieutenant Colonel Guardian Lomir's statements are in opposition to Space Force policy and culture. That is to say that Space Force culture is Marxist and racist. Oof. And that the Space Force is reliant on the historical revisionism of the 1619 Project and the Democrats and or all of the above. That is not a great way to start off a new military branch, is that they are in support. I believe so. Space Force butted off of the Air Force, right?
Yes.
And the Air Force started they butted off of what, the Army?
Army.
And around the time that the Air Force was created was around the time we were at peak fighting Marxism around the world, right?
Yep, correct.
And now the next iteration of the Air Force is itself like specifically Marxist.
I know that they're being tasked with like developing the new core values and policies and vision for this new military branch, but it's pretty bold to say that their vision and values are Marxism and critical race theory. That's a bold move, Cotton.
Yeah. So what is Guardian Lumire's ability to appeal this? Is there?
It's further down. It's further down.
Okay. We'll get into that. All right. Yeah. So, because I mean, it sounds like he's the kind of guy that we want in top brass because he's actively fighting against this. And, well, I guess we see the consequences that, and you know, this kind of goes to show a lot of people lately have been saying, oh, you know, military cowards because, you know, they're not standing up for against this stuff. It's like, well, unfortunately, I'm not saying one way or the other if that's the correct way to look at it, but I mean, at least this guy wasn't a coward. He at least stood up and was, you know, saying stuff about, you know, the things that he didn't like that were going on, and he was in a leadership position. But if he's not the general, it doesn't matter. That's part of the problem with the it's part of the problem within this context, not necessarily a problem with the military and how it's organized, but just the context of this problem is that you have something that's a rigid hierarchy, which is the military, and there isn't a quick or easy way to appeal that decision, though it sounds like we're going to go into that in a second. But if you have one soldier stand up and say, nope, I'm not going to be a Marxist today, I'm not a racist, they're going to fire him. You get 100 of them that do that, they're still going to fire all of them. So I guess the one, on the one hand, you can just have the entire military gut itself of, you know, the half that don't want to be Marxist, and then you'll be left with the half that do. Or you would have to have some kind of violent confrontation to settle this within the military. But clearly, if this is the response, that someone standing up, because Lomir here is standing up against this very specific things that we would like the military and, you know, corporations and the government and police force and all this other stuff to stand up against, is specifically the introduction of critical race theory into these institutions. And he was immediately fired. So
Fox, he's a squadron commander, and so above squadron is group, above group is wing, and then you have numbered Air Force, or in this case, Space Force is just going to be one single number, and then that's where the commander is going to be at, right? Their HQ. So it shows you that the trickle down has gotten down to the lowest command level. right? So it's taken us a while for the policies in the last month since Biden put his picks in for it to work its way down to here. And you haven't seen a lot of people getting kicked out, like not in mass. You've had brass being removed from command positions like him that wasn't publicized. I can tell you now, though, there are people who are a lot of people who are good soldiers who are leaving the military and or are planning to leave the military imminently because of what's going on. And some, those who are still in and can't get out because their contracts haven't expired yet.
Hey, hold on a second. I'm
Okay.
All right, we're back.
In any case, there are people who will stay in, but are planning on leaving soon, and there will be people who will stay and do the best they can to mitigate what's going on. But in the end, those people who are trying to mitigate it, they're going to get kicked out eventually, or they'll choose to leave, and you're going to be left with the Marxist. What's the word when someone works with conspirators? Is that the word?
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, jackboots. I don't know. I don't know a lot of. I'm not a historian, so I don't know what like specific. I know obviously general histories and stuff, and certain things that we've researched more. But I would be curious to know a deeper dive on how did the Chinese military and the German military, what did they look like during the revolution?
Oh, after the revolution, they killed all the non-loyalists.
Okay, so yeah, I'm trying to figure out like what was the iteration of like how did they convert their militaries over?
As soon as they got the top brass, they'd kill everyone who wasn't a loyalist.
So
that was it.
All right, well, I guess
in our system, it's more of a.
I guess we should be. I guess we should all be happy that there's a bullet shortage.
Yeah. Comment there. So next paragraph.
Yeah. Catman in chat. We don't say his name anymore. We're mad at him. He lost me a few $1,000s this week. Okay. So let's see here. In an interview with Fox News on Monday, Lohmeier said that he has been reassigned in the Space Force, but he retains his military rank. Reassigned, as I'm sure Dyer can attest, is a euphemism for no longer in your position. The fact that he maintained his rank after leaving could imply that those that fired him had low confidence that their punishment of him would stand up to scrutiny. I wonder why. In the military, you do need to be able to justify silly things like demotions and other non-judicial punishments, as they can be challenged and overturned.
And a challenge they will have, even though Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeier is no longer the commander, he still has a case he still has filed a case against with the Air Force's Office of Inspector General. To explain why he's using the Air Force Inspector General is because the Space Force doesn't have their own IG yet. So the IG has opened an investigation into the legality of his firing, the possibility of bias, unfair policy, or breach or unequal treatment. The statement of the U.S. Air Force IG's office stated the decision was made by the DFAF IG due to the complexity and sensitivity of the issues under consideration, as well as
a DFAF.
Department of the Air Force IG, Inspector General. So, as well as potential for Department of the Air Force wide impact. I am not understating the point when I say that the outcome of this case will affect the entire Department of Defense.
So, I don't. Why wasn't there hearings announced this immediately? This was a national story. I think, when did this happen? On Tuesday, I think. Mm-hmm. It's been going on for a few days now. We've got 50 supposedly senators with an R next to their name. We got 230 some odd congressmen with an R next to their name. a decent handful of them are military. A decently larger handful of them support the military. Where is Ted Cruz calling the hearings?
That's a good question. I'll tell you that he probably already has contacted his congressman. It's kind of a regular thing when you're slighted by the military to go to EO, Equal Opportunity, go to the IG, and write your congressman. Those three things are the trifecta for dealing with maltreatment in the military, because you can't go through normal legal process. You can't just go to a lawyer, right? So those are your options.
So just to point out, I don't think that our audience would have done that if they're from the area, but we lost the Senate because of Georgia, the Georgia runoff, because a lot of people didn't feel like they needed to go out and vote, and they didn't think it really mattered if we lost the Senate because we already lost presidency. Well, one of the many consequences of not having the Senate is that we don't control the ability to have Senate hearings. And possibly, likely, if Georgia had turned out differently, maybe this guy would have been on Capitol Hill next week. Probably because of Georgia, I'll go ahead and say it is specifically because of Georgia. So anybody who could have voted Republican in Georgia that stayed home, you are part of the reason why we are going to have the military continue down this path unabated, because there won't be hearings about it. There won't be any investigation for up to 3.5 years. Well, maybe up to another 1.5 years, because we'll probably retake some of the chambers at the midterms. But still, obviously, a lot of damage can be done in that amount of time. It's just
Thanks, Georgia. You suck.
Yeah. So and you guys, if you're not from Georgia, you got to keep that in mind. I'm sure you'll forget about it by the next time we get to an election cycle, but the elections do have consequences. Even if you think there's voter manipulation, all that stuff, it doesn't matter. You got to go out and you have to vote. For Republicans, but for conservatives, but this is a result of that apathy. Is that we are that? I mean, if you just say like, oh, you know what, the Republicans don't got control of the Senate, whatever. Well, if you reframed it as like, well, the Republicans would be unable to keep the Marxist infiltration of the military in check. What? Well, maybe I'll set my alarm a little earlier that day, and I'll go out to the polls and pull that lever. So this is one of those consequences, and you know what? Realistically, the Republicans could have done a much better job of explaining that last year, and that's on them too. I think I've said this a bunch of times at the channel, as don't really like Republicans. They're just the only proxy that we have for conservatism. It's a very bad proxy. It's even a worse proxy if you're a libertarian. But it is realistically, if I got a choice between even going back to like the old like Bible thumping Christian conservative Republican Party that we had in the 80s. Honestly, at this point, I'd probably pick that over marching down the same route the Chinese went down, which seems to be the direction we're headed. So you guys, I know people hate it, the idea of like you gotta vote for the lesser of two evils, and a lot of people are saying like, oh, that's a terrible way. I know it's a terrible way to run a country. Okay, you're not an intellectual for figuring out that that's a terrible way to run the country. But guess what? That's the way that we run our country. You got to deal with the reality that we have, and the reality that we have is that you have to go out and vote for the lesser of two evils. There just is not any other way around that.
I mean, you don't have an option. If you don't vote for the lesser of two evils, then you are voting or enabling the greater of two evils. Is that a moral choice?
I don't think so.
It's not your fault that the choices you were given are not the best choices. But all you can do is, with what you can control, what situation you're in, make the best choice with that context.
Yes. I don't think that it is... I don't know. I want to make a moral statement, but I don't think I'm going to not make it. I'm not going to phrase it in terms of morality because I haven't given enough thought, and I don't want to be wrong about something like that. But I don't think that it is. I don't think it's like philosophically like. I don't think it's like an an integrity position to say, oh, well, the world isn't ideal, so I'm not going to participate. Like, that is the world. The world is a series of unideal things. You have to participate in it. You got the left. They think that the way that gender works, where there's only two of them, they think that that's an unideal way that the world works, and they decide that they don't want to participate. Some of the people in Georgia decided, well, the two-party system, that's not ideal, so I'm not going to participate. Well, when you do those things, there's consequences, okay? So I'm not disagreeing that it's unideal, but it is just part of the human condition, and I'm sorry. I wish it was different, and to a certain extent that we have some ability to make it different, at least on a local level. But just saying, well, reality isn't ideal, so I'm not going to participate.
This is the thought experiment of the person who can control the tracks on the train, and it's currently on a track to kill 10 people, but you could change it. And it could kill one person instead on the other track. Now it's kind of a real example of that. And in that example, you're supposed to assume there are no other decisions. Either you do nothing, or you kill one person instead of 10. Right? It's the same thing. Like, your lack of action is a choice and does have consequences.
So another way to look at it, and for those of you that are so inclined, I think you can pretty easily overlay a religious framework on what I'm about to say. I think it's perfectly compatible for secular and religious thinkings. But humans are special in that we have agency, a rational agency over our environment. We can manipulate our environment to a much higher degree than other animals or life forms. And that is part of the thing that makes us human. It's a unique thing, the amount of control we have over our environment through our agency. So if you have an opportunity to exercise your agency and you don't exercise it, you're not fulfilling your purpose. You're not fulfilling your telos. You're not fulfilling the reason why you were put here on this earth by whoever. It is a uniquely human thing that you have the ability to do. America was founded to ensure that you had the ability to have agency. And for people to just throw up their hands and say, you know what, this whole agency thing, that's a pretty big burden. And, the world's not really ideal for me to be an agent. And so I don't, I'm just going to put my hands up and say, I don't really care. Let's just let everybody kind of run amok. No, it's a unhuman thing to do, to reject the agency that you have. And for a religious bent, I think that when you have the opportunity to change your environment for the better and you just say, I'm not going to do it, I think that you're not meeting what God's kind of intention was for you.
Agreed. I have a breaking story we can cover after this one. So a challenge. So I say, of course, he is challenging through the IG. This case could have effects not just in the Air Force or the Space Force, but the entire DoD. It will set a precedent on which will determine if critical race theory is even authorized in the DoD in the first place, and whether or not military members can criticize racist policies. So, if I'm being cynical, then this could determine that we can't criticize racist policies, while at the same time they have a EO office where you're supposed to go if you are being racially mistreated. So, but then we can't criticize it because critical race theory, which is racism, is actually DoD policy. That could be the outcome of this. Or if they're being consistent by saying that they are opposed to racist policies and racist enforcement of policies, then they'd have to say that critical race theory is excluded from all DoD. Those are the two outcomes.
I don't think that I don't think anyone thought that this would happen overnight, and it usually doesn't. But you look down the road of where does this go? Well, I would imagine that the Chinese equivalent of the DoD, I think that they have, it's pretty obvious that they have ingrained in their policies critical race theory. They believe that the races are inherently different, and they use their military to implement that belief that the races are inherently different. And how does that implementation play out? Well, They're running racial concentration camps.
Yep.
So, that's where does that lead us?
Not a good direction.
I don't think that it doesn't lead us. So that's the problem, right? So if you are integrating into military hierarchy the idea that the races are inherently different from each other, if that's an idea that's getting integrated in there, there is nothing stopping that from eventually leading to the military doing operations based off of race, moving around the races around the country and all that stuff. There's nothing that prevents that. If, however, you have as part of the DoD policy that the military does not see an inherent difference in the races, then there is no way in which the military would ever even accidentally be used to run the type of death camps that we're seeing in China.
Yep. So on this topic of neo-Marxism and critical race theory in the military and its destructive effects on our military, we have this interesting comparison. See, there's a recent ad, military army ad, that was put out by the U.S., and also there's a comparison to an ad put out by the Russian army. Let's compare the two.
Твоей новой жизни. Что ты знаешь о себе? На что ты способен? Вопросы могут остаться без ответов, но разве ты сумел знать себя? Познать границы своих возможностей? К черту границы, а без боя нет победы. Но на самом деле, главный враг — это задача выследить врага, догнать его, превзойти, стать лучше, чем он.
It begins in California, with a little girl raised by two moms. I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age. To marry my other mom. With such powerful role models, I finished high school at the top of my class, and after meeting with an Army recruiter, I found it. A way to prove my inner strength. I'm U.S. Army Corporal Emma Malone Lord, and I answered my calling.
What a stark difference there, huh?
Yeah, so the those two ads were put out recently. One was put out recently by the Russian government to recruit Russian men to the Russian military, and the other one was put out by the U.S. government to recruit, I guess, narcissistic TikTok girls to the U.S. military to fight the Russian men.
Yeah, pick your fighter, huh?
Yeah. So I think among the obviously the stark contrast between the Russian military ad and the U.S. ad is pretty obvious. I do want to point out something that just watching the U.S. one on its own, the first thing I noticed was that it was interesting that they chose to animate it. Because during the animation, they showed this female soldier doing a lot of physical activities, but they animated them, and I thought that was an interesting choice. That instead of filming this female soldier doing all of these extremely physical activities that require a lot of upper body strength, instead of filming her doing those things, they animated it. I wonder why they had to animate it, Dyer.
On a completely unrelated note, and not in any way insinuating this is the reality for this one soldier here, but I've noticed that small females have a lot of trouble with the rope climb.
You know what I just noticed? So this girl is clearly darker skinned Hispanic in origin with black hair. And they whitewashed the fuck out of her. They
did.
They whitewashed the fuck out of her. Jesus Christ, she's blonde hair, the brightest blue eyes you've ever seen, super pale white skin.
She doesn't have blue eyes.
She does, but they're super dark.
No, those are not blue. Look at those.
I'm looking at them, and they're not blue, but they're just really dark blue. But like she has, she has like I'm half. I'm from Spain originally, Spain and Germany, and I've got skin like hers, where I'm a little bronzed, and they whitewashed the fuck out of her, and then they gave her blonde hair. That was I didn't even notice that until I'm sitting here looking at this, where I mean, I didn't do this cut screen thing. So obviously we're looking at the picture on the right here. That is the Army did that. They did that cut picture where they wanted to show the animated version and her in the same frame. I am baffled that they would show how much they whitewashed her, because that is typically a no-no. A bad thing to do, but I don't know. I maybe conservatives have been running down the wrong track here this week. Maybe we should have been pushing that they shouldn't be whitewashing our Spanish soldiers.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the things you focus on in a video. What I focused on was it really bothered me that she's saying that because her two moms were able to marry, that's what gave her the strength to serve in the military. How does that make you a better soldier exactly, that your parents got married?
Well, the other thing about this is, and I'm just going to say what I'll say, and then you can speak more to it, is the military is not about you, and this entire commercial was a animation about why she is special. Like, what is special about her and her history and all the things that make her her and her unique, and she's such a special snowflake and pretty princess and all this stuff. And that the Army is advertising that they're looking for the most unique, special people.
Narcissists.
Yes, who are very self-interested in themselves. But is that really how the military is supposed to work, Dyer? Are you supposed to retain your individuality when you join?
So that's the wrong question, but what you mean is true. So here's an example. Last year and before, the ads that were being given to recruit people to the military, and also the inspirational videos provided to the troops to kind of like raise their spirits, they're all about their tradition, the history, the legacy of the military that you be joining. You are becoming part of something great. You'll be a integral part of that great thing that already exists. The reason for joining isn't because you are great. It's because the military and its mission was great. And they have a huge focus on, when you go to a new unit, showing you the history of that unit and why you are fitting into an important thing, and that it's not about you, it's about the team, it's about the history and what you're becoming a part of. And when you join the military, they do want you to have your individuality, but it's in addition to, you have to adapt to the culture, the values, and the team environment of the military, right? Yeah. That is the requisite thing you need to have, and then your individuality is on top of that and provides because we do need diverse opinions when it comes to how do we defeat different obstacles. We can't have diversity in loyalty or values, right?
Yeah.
So you can still maintain your individuality, but it's not about you, it's about the team. It's about the service.
Yeah, so...
Nazi fags.
How dare you?
Juicy nigga.
Why would you do that?
Fox may not want to make a moral statement, but I will. All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. If you do...
That's the quote I was looking for. I basically said the same thing.
If you do nothing, the weeds will overtake your yard, attracting rats, attracting snakes, until it is dangerous to, I think, walk in. Was perhaps I missed the very, very tail of that. For some reason, it stopped reading us off. But no, that's perfect. I think that is what I was reaching for the triumph. The reason why I didn't want to say it as a moral statement is because I didn't have it fully formed in my mind, and I didn't want to start speaking and then get myself into a dead end there, like Biden or something. But yeah, no, that's kind of the point that I was trying to make, is when you have the power to do something, anything, it is better to do something to even attempt to better your situation. It is not, you're not fully actualizing yourself as a human being or as in any kind of moral framework if you just have apathy for your situation, that you are just going to sit there and decide that you are helpless and that you are not even going to attempt, successful or not, but you're not even going to attempt to try to better your situation. That is, You're fundamentally missing out on what it means to be human. And if you are part of a religious or moral framework, you are certainly going against almost every religious tenet of most of the major faiths, that you're just going to be apathetic to your situation.
So, the FBI and CIA recently put out ads too, right?
Oh, I got a lot more to say about this. Hold up. Okay, so...
Oh, sorry.
I do want to highlight, do we got a problem that she's got lesbian parents? No. Do we got a problem that she was at gay rights parades when she was a kid? Nope. Do we got a problem that she was a high schooler, that she was in a sorority? Nope. Do we got a problem that she was from California? Yes. No, but the issue is with the ad, and the issue is more so with the army. It's not with her. The attacks are not against her. The attacks are against the army, and that the army... We saw what the Russians decided to portray to the world as to what is the Russian military about. Well, I think I got a pretty good idea about the Russian military and what they're about from their ad. From the army, though, I don't get any kind of sense of protection out of what the army is showing us. I'm a little concerned, actually. It doesn't strike fear into the hearts of the enemy, and it doesn't strike confidence into our citizens here at home. I don't see anything that makes me confident that the army is looking to recruit strong defenders. That's what I need. I'm already a weak dork, and I'm a programmer. I'm not that weak. I'm a little strong, but I'm fine with the social contract that we have, that the government is outsourcing to other citizens to become defenders of the country. That's great. That means I don't have to worry about it. But part of that contract is that they pick people, and they're recruiting people who are capable of such defense. And this ad is trying to recruit people who are not capable of that defense. I will highlight again, I find it very, very striking that they chose not to show her engaging in physical activity. That has been one of the primary critiques of the military allowing females into certain positions over the last few decades, is that they are not able to meet the physical requirements. That is not sexist. It is actual facts. It is facts on the ground. The Army actually, last month, they had to revise their fitness standards again because females were unable to meet the fitness requirements again after they lowered them previously, and they lowered them again. And next year they're probably going to end up doing the same thing where they're going to have to lower them again. What would have been interesting if they wanted to show that females are capable was a story Dyer told me a while back, was that we often will run female pilots on bombing missions in the Middle East because it is especially embarrassing for a Muslim to be killed by a woman. Yep. And I think that if obviously she's not in the Air Force, so she's not a fighter pilot, although the Army does have planes too. Everybody's got planes. But I mean, maybe they could have shown her doing something like that, and they could have actually gotten footage or, done, obviously not doing like a real bombing run, but, they could have shown her in a plane doing something. They could have shown her, I don't know, doing medic stuff, going into the, why don't you, because you could have even... because you're doing a commercial, right? You're doing kind of like a movie atmosphere. It's simulated, right? Instead of animating her doing physical activities, they could have just done movie magic to have her do physical activities. That would have been fine. In that Russian one, obviously a lot of the plane jumping part, that was CGI, but you still got the idea. Okay, Russia's looking for people that are willing to jump out of planes, whether they're CGI or not. So they could have had her doing that. They could have had her jumping out of a plane and parachuting into some war zone, or given her a very light dummy body to carry out of a fire zone and carry him back to give him medical attention or something. They could have done any number of things, real or simulated, to show that she was strong and capable of giving the enemy hell, and that they should be terrified that she is there. That the enemy should be terrified that we are recruiting LGBT activists with lesbian moms, because you know what? That's got nothing to do with them coming to kick your ass. That's what they could have easily done that. They could have easily done that. Again, either movie magic or not, and that would have been a great ad. A lot of people would have looked at that and said like, yeah, all right, well, I don't know if she could have really done that, but it would have been a great ad.
Our recruitment ads also can and should be used as psyops against the enemy, demonstrating, even like exaggerating how great we are, you know?
Yeah. But instead they, I mean, really, it's interesting that, yeah, I won't say that. But yeah, there's a lot of ways that they could have gone about this, but the way that they chose to go about it was to highlight the soldier's narcissism about all the things that are special about her. And she didn't say anything about what it is that why does she want to defend the country? What is she going to do to defend the country? She didn't say anything about that, or what about the Army values kind of fit with her previous ideas and all that stuff. I don't know. It's an interesting direction for the Army to go.
Yeah. The ads I saw when I joined were talking about how there was a small number of people who fit a higher standard, who are willing to sacrifice to defend our country and put our enemies on notice. That to people who were willing to protect their communities, protect the way of life, and keep America's enemies at bay. That was the argument. It was like, you're doing something great, sacrificing for your country. That was the ads I saw when I first joined. Right. This ad does not inspire me. It is like her, them bragging about her and how special she is. That doesn't make me want to join. Right. And that there's been similar ads from the FBI and CIA, like I mentioned, where they're attempting to recruit weak, mentally ill, in some cases, woke young people who are very, very much caring about themselves, not the team.
Yeah.
And what bothers me about that is, name one organization that survived wokeness, like being taken over completely by wokeness. Usually, any place that gets woke is either been destroyed or is on the road to being destroyed. So I think the only motive, if you are aware of this, for recruiting people, is either you're recruiting them and you're pushing off to the side, and it's just you trying to like pretend that you support these groups to get, for some political reason, or you're trying to destroy the organizations that are recruiting these people. In that case, if the FBI and CIA are truly attempting to destroy themselves by recruiting young people that are woke, I might actually be in favor of this.
No, no. So similar to who was that general, was it Whiteley or whatever? So Whitney, whatever, and the CIA and these Army propaganda officers, they are not trying to destroy their organizations. They're trying to make sure that their organizations are attractive to the next regime. The next regime. I'm not saying I'm hoping for it. I'm just saying it looks like the way the cards are folding right now is the next regime is some kind of Democrat full control, and we'll see something similar to what we've seen in the last century. And a lot of these organizations, these big government entities, and these woke corporations, they're looking at the future, and their bet is, if the Republicans or if the conservatives and libertarians win out, well, you know what? We'll end up leaving these companies, and the Army and the CIA. We'll end up leaving them alone because we never do anything when we've got power. But if the Democrats win, if there's a new regime, if there's some kind of great changeover, some kind of reset, perhaps, maybe even a reset that is a level of greatness in the resets. Well, the CIA doesn't want to get left behind. The Army doesn't want to get left behind. Coca-Cola doesn't want to get left behind. They want to make sure that they look attractive to the next regime. They want to signal that they are willing to play ball, and that is what this is. That Senator Whiteley, he's not thinking about what does my job look like under a Biden administration. He's thinking about what is my or a President Biden administration. He's thinking about, what does my job look like under a Emperor Kamala regime?
Well, I was joking, but in all seriousness, the Biden administration did attach as a requirement for funding for a lot of these organizations that they have these kinds of recruitment ads. So it actually was very much they were required to do something along these lines. How they did it was up to them, but they had to do it was attached to their funding to do these diversity inclusion style ads.
Yeah. Yeah, the infidel, I mean, for whatever reason, but obviously there is obviously a pretty big change in what the Democrats are trying to do with the government, and the Army in particular, that's not an organization that's been traditionally part of woke culture, but they're adapting as they see what's coming down the horizon. Same thing with a lot of these big corporations. It's funny that the liberals used to really, really hate the CIA and the FBI. He used to be, the enemy number one. And then now all of a sudden, in less than 10 years, all of a sudden you got the same people who hated the FBI during Occupy Wall Street. Now they love them because these organizations, the FBI and the CIA, have adapted to what they're seeing on the horizon, and they want to make sure that their organizations are useful for whoever the next regime is.
So on the topic that was brought up by Infidel, I have that breaking story if you want to cover it.
Let's do it.
All right, so this is breaking. New fold effect finding in New Hampshire could impact entire state results in New Hampshire and possibly 3 other states. So today, auditors in Windham, New Hampshire, started testing if folds in ballots, in quotations, impacted the vote count in the 2020 election. If this is true, this could impact the entire state of New Hampshire.
New Hampshire is pretty blue, isn't it? Anyways, yep. I mean, it's an interesting story. I don't not believe it. I'm just trying to think of what are the ramifications of that. If it's true,
it's not about New Hampshire. It's about the 3 other states more likely.
Oh, okay.
Where it's gonna, yeah. So basically, they found that the voting machines were they've already determined that their vote count was unreliable, and they're trying to find out to what degree. And that's going to be a story that's going to be developing, but that's an interesting admission.
My dad works in robotics, and they designed a system last year that when Apple ships pallets of their Apple crap to the US, it's usually on random stacked pallets. So there's just all kinds of different Apple crap devices randomly stacked on a giant pallet. And my dad helped program a robot that has a vision system that can look at the box from any angle because it's randomly stacked. And then the robot has this very fine little tool arm hand thing, and it looks at the box and it can instantly determine what is in that box, what product is this, and then it can figure out how to pick it up, and it'll set it neatly down on a particular conveyor belt and send it on its merry way. And so we can do all that. We have a robot figure out which stupid Apple iPhone is sitting on a pallet. But for some reason, Scantron bubble sheets are just so far beyond us. Little frustrating. It hurts. It hurts. All right. Next story.
Yes. Scantron's so hard.
It is very difficult. All right. So, well, you guys know him. You guys love him. Putin. And what's Putin doing? Well, Putin is laying some pipe, some hard
with
pipe.
Biden.
And who's helping him lay that hard pipe? Biden, because Biden likes to watch. So, Russia. If you are the kind of person that remembers reality, then you may remember that the Democrats for the last 5 years have labeled Russia as the #1 geopolitical threat, and that they had even planned the Trump presidency prior to Reagan being in office. They are that much of a long game that Russia, while they were even the Soviet Union, back during Reagan, was planning on Trump becoming president in 2016.
Impressive.
It's very impressive. And after years of the Democrats screeching and even an impeachment based off the false allegation that Trump was, quote, giving Putin everything he wanted, end quote, a recent Biden decision has really left us scratching our heads after we're remembering everything that happened the last 5 years.
Yeah, the story comes from Axios. Quote, the Biden administration will waive sanctions on the corporate entity and CEO overseeing the construction of Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline into Germany. The pipeline in question has a bit of infamy from the Trump era. It was referenced during a NATO summit in 2018, during which, among other things, Trump famously chewed out several NATO members for not paying their fair share when speaking on the pipeline. Trump said, quote, Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia. We're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. We're protecting Germany. I don't want to keep you guys hearing that terrible rendition of Trump, but I'll continue in my normal voice. He said, we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all these countries, and then numerous of other countries out and make a pipeline deal with Russia where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia. So that was a direct quote. I still continue, just so you know, it's not me speaking incorrectly. That's Trump. Yes. So we're supposed to protect you against Russia, and you pay billions of dollars to Russia, and I think that's very inappropriate. And I would agree with him. Why are we paying money to and having our military deployed to Europe to protect Europe from Russia, and at the same time, that same Europe that we're defending is paying money to their adversary? Germany is a captive of Russia.
Still Trump saying this.
Yeah, see, it's still Russia. So still Trump saying this, right? I thought the quote ended. Sorry.
No.
So Trump said Germany is a captive of Russia. They got rid of their coal plants. They got rid of their nuclear. They're getting so much of their oil and gas from Russia. I think it is something NATO has to look at. It is very inappropriate.
Absolutely, very true, Mr. Trump.
And of course, why did Germany give up all that power protection? Why did they do that? Maybe something to do with climate change.
Oof. So backing up those words, in 2019, Trump signed a national defense bill. So again, that NATO summit happened in 2018. In 2019, Trump signed a national defense bill that included sections on sanctions on the companies building this particular pipeline that he was talking about. And this week, Joe Biden undid those sanctions, allowing the pipeline deal to continue. Oh, no.
Because of the sanctions were legal... because the sanctions were legislated, meaning they are the law of the land, Biden undoing them with a stroke of a pen is a little illegal, because the president doesn't make law and can't end law either. The
oops,
yeah,
oopsies.
The egregiousness of the law breaking was such that Senator Ted Cruz was forced to do something. He had to take a break from selling books and being paid a paid employee of the media outlet to respond to the situation. Oh, poor Ted Cruz had to do a modicum of his job. Cruz wrote on Twitter, because that's hard work for him. Stunning in defiance of U.S. law, Biden is actively helping Putin build his pipeline. Objectively speaking, the Biden administration is shaping up to be the most pro-Russia administration in the modern era, and they didn't even help him get elected, supposedly.
A tweet. Stunning and brave, Ted Cruz. Stunning and brave.
Much brave, much stunning.
So bravely stunning. No word on if Ted Cruz will be bringing articles of impeachment up over this illegal action, which realistically, that's what impeachment is for. That the impeachment is for if the president breaks the law. I would say this is a pretty big, like, this law isn't just a regular law, right? It's not some, like, paper pusher law that he broke where it was, just a goofy hoop to jump through for, like, business deals or whatever. This was a law for national defense. That is a law that, at least in my opinion, has a little bit of a higher burden. I absolutely think that... and Ted Cruz, he's the one who identified that this was against the law. He should bring up articles of impeachment. Are they going to go anywhere? No. But it should be on record that the Republicans think that this was against the law. You're putting, really, you're putting global security at risk. You've essentially undermined the entire point of the NATO alliance, which is what Trump's point was in the first place, was that Germany was undermining the entire point of NATO, which was supposedly to defend Europe from Russia. And Biden stepped in and said, hey, you know what? You do you, Germany. You keep undermining NATO. We don't care. We'll just pay for it. No, there was a law signed into law. A bill that was signed into law. Yeah, there's a law signed into bill. No, there was a bill signed into law. Ted Cruz probably voted on that. It was passed by both chambers, signed into law. The national defense is a different kind of law. Like, that is a much higher burden. Joe Biden cannot just get rid of it. Now, they should be bringing articles of impeachment up against him, but I doubt that they will. The Ted just doesn't have time to bring up articles of impeachment. He has a lot of books that he's writing. He's written at least 2 in the last 3 years. He's working on another one. He also it's very hard for Ted Cruz to maintain his status as Ben Shapiro's Employee of the Month, 18 months running now. And so, it's really hard for Ted to find time in his day for doing something as blasé as,
his job,
being a senator. No, so this is bad. This doesn't do, contrary to popular belief, apparently, Republicans and conservatives really don't want Russia to gain more power. We think maybe we should just stop poking at Russia. Maybe we don't need to constantly be escalating tensions. But we also don't want to see Russia gaining stronger footholds and control over our supposed allies, especially in Europe. And we got some Republican senators who can see that, and they see that this is specifically against the law, and they're probably not going to do anything about it. I will eat my words next week if Ted Cruz brings up articles of impeachment, but as of right now, I am guessing that he will not. And I'm guessing that no other Republican will bring up articles of impeachment over this either.
Yeah, I do find it ridiculous and insulting that Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline, and also through that and other policies has destroyed our energy independence. But at the same time, he is empowering Russia to have influence over the market in Europe.
Yeah.
That we're now going to be dependent on. By the way, we're now dependent on the European fuel market because we can't generate enough on our own.
Yes, which is just great. Night Shadow Wolf. So I think it's a little strange that the last time Biden was in power during the Obama administration, the State Department, alongside with Hillary Clinton and John Kerry, gave Russia control over 21% of U.S. domestic uranium in the Uranium One deal. It's weird that the Dems are so insistent on giving Russia more control over energy. And it's even weirder that Biden seems to be very, very close to these decisions every time. I don't know. There's just something fishy going on there.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting a conspiracy. I'm suggesting a coordinated criminal cabal.
Yeah.
People.
So we haven't seen any analysis on this, but so I really don't know, but I have to ask the question: is this in any way connected to Hunter Biden and Burisma?
Yeah.
Now,
go ahead.
See, what really is strange to me is pretty much determined by now that Burisma was set up by the CIA as an operation to try to keep Russia out of the energy market in the Ukraine, right? So it was the U.S. government. It was putting a lot of effort in covertly trying to block Russia from European energy markets, and yet now Biden. And of course, Biden's son was involved in Burisma at that time. But now Biden is actively helping Russia get a foothold into the European power market. So I'm really confused by this.
Yeah. Triumvirate says organized crime is he's recommending that as compared to conspiracy, which I agree. It's a good way to phrase it. And the infidel says that he's cleared this up for me. So I was confused because it seems a little strange, but the infidel has cleared this up for me that it's not weird if we understand that one of their goals is to weaken the U.S. And our position in the world. Yes, that it suddenly. Thank you, infidel. It does suddenly make a lot more sense now.
Yes.
All right.
So I guess the key takeaway is Biden has hurt our ability to be energy independent and is helping Russia to control Europe. Good job.
And this pipeline before Trump put sanctions on it was like 90% complete. And once this is in place, like that's it. There's no more putting this back into putting the cat back in the bag here. You can't push that toothpaste back into the tube. Once. I'm sure Russia is going to be cranking as hard as they possibly can to get that pipe laid as fast as they can, because once it's there, you can't shut that down. That pipeline will be there for, in one way or another, that pipeline will be there for the next 100 years. That will never. Once that's through, that's it. So I guess that'll be part of Biden's legacy.
Yep. Good job.
Alrighty. Next story.
Funny because there's another story that's talking about how Russia is our biggest adversary right now, and then we're also giving them loads of money and influence over Europe. Good job.
Yeah. All right. So we have a PolitiFact undebunk of the Lab Leak conspiracy theory.
I love the story.
Yes. So fact checks are facts. Not the checks, the facts. They're tricky things, especially political facts. Doubly, especially when they aren't really facts at all. What are we talking about here, guys? Just a lot of facts and checks and politicals. So we are talking about the same story that we talked about approximately 1 year ago on this channel, the lab leak hypothesis.
So, it was really a fact. It was a false fact. So while it seemed pretty obvious to anyone with a brain that there was at least a little bit of correlation between the biosafety level 4 virology lab being 200 yards from the reported location of the first COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan, China, you'd have to be a racist to say it out loud. At least that's what the legacy media and the people that said not to wear masks just before they told us to wear masks said last year when the hypothesis was first put forward.
It's funny how a scientific hypothesis can be considered a conspiracy theory if it just happens to fit the wrong political narrative. Because
also, it's not conspiracy. It doesn't require more than one person.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is a thing that's been pointed out, is that a conspiracy. A few people want to get the Democrats always want to get real technical about stuff, but a conspiracy involves a coordinated act between two or more people. The lab leak hypothesis is merely suggesting that it was accidentally let out, but one
incompetent Chinese person is all required.
Yes, it does not take a conspiracy. It is an accident of one person. It's not a conspiracy. So, but yeah, normally, so the origin of a virus, that's a scientific question, right? Like you would discover the answer to that through the scientific process. And in science, when you have a question, you typically formulate hypotheses as to what the answer to that question is, and then you go through and find some method of testing to figure out which hypothesis is correct. So when I don't, having the lab leak as a hypothesis for where the virus originated, I don't understand why that became a conspiracy theory when really it was just as a scientific hypothesis. Like, that's the process of science. I know the Democrats are the party of science, but real science originally was that you could put forward a hypothesis, and you can put forward any hypothesis you want. No hypothesis is stupid. Yes, some of them are. But they're not wrong in their own sense as a hypothesis. They're only wrong after the experiment has proven them to be false. But it's not wrong to put forward a hypothesis. Certainly, there are better guesses than others. Some have more merit, others don't. But the idea that we just attack a hypothesis now in science just because it doesn't fit with what the Democrats wants, that's science is dead and dying right now. I'm actually really concerned about science in general. I have a lot of dreams as to what the future could be, but a lot of that requires science. And right now, as a species, we're not doing super hot on the science front. So right now, most science is geared towards corporations and how to make them more money by scientifically tricking us into buying their product and all that stuff. And then the kind of public science is being completely controlled by the woke left right now, and they're using what should have been the university system to do kind of public-based science works. They're using that to, again, figure out ways how to trick us into voting for them, or how to make us do what they want and all that stuff. And so there really isn't any science groups right now as a species at large that are looking at just general science stuff for the betterment of the human future. They're really just, all science right now is geared towards how do we better control humans. And that's very terrifying for what kind of future. That doesn't lead to like the good future. That leads to
that kind of scientific research is what's getting all the funding. It doesn't mean that no one else wants to do research in other areas. They're just not getting funded or
Oh, no. I'm not saying that people don't want to do good science. I'm just saying that there is no organizations that are actively enabling it. So you can want to do good science all you want, but you can't, if there's no, you can't do it. So
you can call the Nazi for actually doing some real science, that's a problem, right? I want to point out, though, that so if your response to a good faith hypothesis is to say, I will not even consider that thing, and I will call anyone who even suggests that thing as being something worth researching a racist or a Nazi or any other ism, that means that you are not someone who cares about science. No matter how much you say, I care about science, it doesn't matter. If you're not willing to consider a good faith hypothesis, then no, you're not. So that was the mainstream media's response was, we will criticize anyone who says it, and we will not consider it. And it was purely because of, as we mentioned in the last show, actually, that because Orange Man Bad, because they were being political in wanting to oppose Trump no matter what he says or does, because it would have supported Trump's criticism of China, they could not even consider the idea that the virus came from China due to incompetence of one of their labs, because it would have supported Trump's racism, quote unquote.
So, as dead as science may be, it could be getting a second wind this week, as it is now becoming mainstream to consider the lab leak hypothesis. You're allowed to consider it now. The scientists have allowed you that small bit of liberty. So it's so mainstream to consider the lab leak hypothesis, in fact, that a lot of legacy media outlets are finding themselves a bit embarrassed about their previous reporting on it.
I wonder if the people who were banned from social media for talking about it will get their accounts back.
No, they will not.
Oh, okay. Thanks for having that quick answer. Perhaps the best example of this comes from a PolitiFact fact check, which was recently re-fact checked by PolitiFact fact check checkers, checking the facts once more. They wrote in quotes, "Editor note, May 17, 2021. When this fact check was first published in September 2020, PolitiFact's sources included researchers who asserted that SARS-CoV-2 virus could not have been manipulated." So, to restate, they're saying that their previous fact check was found false based on the opinions of some unnamed researchers.
That doesn't sound very
Scientific.
factual. All right, so the original body of the fact check was directed at an interview Tucker Carlson had with a Dr. Li Meng Yan, a Chinese geneticist who spoke for more than 6 minutes about what she had discovered after directly studying the genetic structure of COVID-19. Her statement that, quote, "it is man-made virus created in a lab," end quote, summarizes most of what she had to say. Before this most recent recheck fact check, PolitiFact fact checkers had this to say about the interview. Quote, "After Fox News aired its interview with Yan, Facebook labeled the clip, which was posted on the official Tucker Carlson Tonight page and shared with tens of thousands of times, as false information. It was also flagged on Instagram." So PolitiFact is reporting that Facebook labeled the clip as false. Facebook uses PolitiFact as a fact checker.
Oh, it's so meta. That's so friggin' meta.
Let's see here. So I'm gonna find a spot.
Talk about cytogenesis. Jeez.
Yeah, yes. So you guys follow around here in the article. So PolitiFact continues. But how do we know Yan's claims about the coronavirus are wrong, and where do they come from? Let's review the facts. Again, this is PolitiFact's original article that they published back in September. Let's see here. They say her claims run counter to scientific evidence. Do they? All right. Let's see here. Scientists worldwide have publicly shared the genetic makeup of the coronavirus thousands of times. If the virus had been altered, there would be evidence in its genome data. But there isn't. In March, several microbiology, infectious disease, and evolutionary biology experts wrote in Nature, a respected scientific journal, that the genetic makeup of the coronavirus does not indicate that it was altered. There we go.
Okay, so we also at the same time had multiple geneticists and virologists who said that there was evidence that it was manipulated. So at best case scenario, you have people who are both researchers in the field who are disagreeing on that fact. Thus, you cannot say it is fact-checked false when your sources equal out.
Yeah, but the Democrats wanted it to be fact-checked false. Did you consider that?
Yeah, I did consider that. But it doesn't. Their fields don't over.
Think of the politicians, won't you, Dyer?
And we found that it's possible that some researchers weren't lying because of political reasons, but they really legitimately didn't find the evidence of it being manipulated because, in Fauci's own words, they had a process that was being used to
Stop skipping ahead.
I'm sorry, I haven't read it yet. All right, so I'll continue. PolitiFact fact checkers continued saying that assertions is more widely disputed. That assertion is now more widely disputed. For that reason, we are removing this fact check from our database pending a more thorough. Maybe you should have done a thorough review in the first place, huh? How about that? Currently, we consider the claim to be unsupported by evidence and in dispute. So also no evidence against it, right? if it's not supported by, but also not opposed by evidence. The original fact check is in its entirety is preserved below for transparency and archived for archival purposes. Read our May 2021 report for more on the origins of the virus that caused COVID-19.
Where are you at? Highlight your cursor on where you're at so I can track where you're at.
Right here.
Okay. What part did you just read? Okay.
That part.
All right. You're good. Okay. I thought we moved around. I got messed up on the page here. All right. So, yeah, I think we skipped around a little bit because I just read this part, so I don't know what happened.
Okay. So,
anyways,
I'll move down.
Okay. So basically, the last part I just read that was supposed to be read before Dyer read this part that he's about to read right now. So again, they wrote that. PolitiFact wrote in their fact check that the genetic makeup of the coronavirus does not indicate that it was altered.
So, first off, Yan did say that she had evidence. We are discussing that PolitiFact didn't reach out to her. Sorry, we're guessing that PolitiFact did not reach out to her to ask about her evidence. Second off, it is interesting that PolitiFact would mention that there was no evidence that the virus had been altered. For what we point you back to the clip we point you back to the clip of Rand Paul that we watched last week.
Dangerous viruses. Government scientists like yourself who favor gain-of-function research.
I don't favor gain-of-function research in China. You are saying things that are not correct.
Government defenders of gain-of-function, such as yourself, say that COVID-19 mutations were random and not designed by man. But interestingly, the technique that Dr. Barrick developed forces mutations by serial passage through cell culture that the mutations appear to be natural. In fact, Dr. Barrick named the technique the no-see-em technique because the mutations appear naturally. Nicholas Baker in the New York Magazine said nobody would know if the virus had been fabricated in a laboratory or grown in nature.
So, it's interesting that PolitiFact used, quote, not seeing evidence of manipulation as evidence that it was not manipulated, when the specific technique that Wuhan, in criminal conjunction with the U.S. National Institute of Health, were developing was called the no-see-em technique. You're not going to see the evidence. It's called the no-see-em technique.
Yeah, it would also have been pretty interesting for the fact that this was being done, and by the way, evidence of this funding and this technique existed at the time they did this fact check. If they were doing a real fact check, they might have even researched this particular information.
Yes, it would have been interesting to see them and research that kind of information.
Actually do real fact checks, maybe?
Yes.
Yeah. Would be nice. So, just for some additional fact checks. From other legacy sources, Newsweek tried to fact-check the clip of Rand Paul saying, quote, but it's not clear that the no-see-em techniques, such as passing a virus through a succession of animals, would truly be undetectable. Yes, you heard that correctly. Newsweek's fact-check is that the no-see-em technique might be seeable. Unbelievable.
Man, with news like that, I don't see why we even need scientists.
Yeah, we just use journalists.
Yeah,
as our new scientists.
They're pretty smart.
Yeah, they're definitely in the right career field, though.
Definitely. Fact check. Check factors. Like Crowder's got a bit where they do that. That's where I stole some of this from. All right. Well, that was fun. Right. So you're no longer a racist if you thought Wuhan leaked out coronavirus.
I thought racism was determined by, a belief that one race was better than another, but apparently it's just like, doubting someone's unsubstantiated scientific claim.
I mean, I think that the Chinese government's not real great at running high security labs.
What is the 4 recent outbreaks that came from China? Is that what clued you in?
Yeah.
But
okay. It's not necessarily that, I think a Chinese person or an Asian person is capable of being competent. I just think that under communism, they aren't being their best selves.
I thought maybe you doubted the veracity of their process there because they had labs fail international inspections of their labs multiple times. But it's, maybe I'm wrong.
It's funny because I think it kind of highlights kind of like a wider commentary on what the left thinks about like various races. Is us saying like, hey, maybe black people shouldn't stab each other. Maybe it's okay when the police stop a black girl from trying to stab another black girl, and the left says, well, that's racist, and it's like, well, why? I guess they think that we think that all black people just want to stab each other, and so us calling out this one girl, like maybe we might think that all black people are bad. It's like, no, I just think that liberal policies in liberal cities like aren't allowing black people or any people in those cities to be the best version of themselves. Similarly with the China thing, I think that an Asian person could run a lab competently. I just think that the communist government isn't allowing them to be their best selves in running that lab competently.
Yeah.
All right.
Next story. So our next story is going to be an update on the whole Israeli-Hamas situation.
It's complicated. Next story.
We already went over the history last time, so we're not going to touch that today. So the updates are, after 11 days of exchanging rockets and missiles, both Israel and Hamas agreed to a U.S.-brokered ceasefire, with both sides claiming, I know, total boo. Both sides are exiting the brokered ceasefire claiming victory, and neither side feeling they were defeated, which is great. This signals that to the world, another ceasefire with no resolution, that there will be another decade of war in Israel. Again, the United States has used its influence to prevent any real resolution to the conflict while also funding both sides.
Yay.
And if you guys don't remember, what I'm referring to here is the U.S. gave millions of dollars to the Palestinian Authority, which is Hamas. And they then purchased and fired an equivalent number of rockets based off the value that we gave them. And then we also sell the Iron Dome missiles to Israel. We give them money to buy weapons and ammunition from us to then fight Hamas with. So we are, I don't know, using tax dollars to fund two sides of a conflict to then enrich the military-industrial complex.
And so going along with that, it's very relevant that we bring up something that we brought up a while ago, that is General Lloyd Austin, who is the current U.S. Defense Secretary, was on the board of Raytheon as long ago as 6 months. And he actually, it's illegal for him to be in the U.S. Defense Secretary position after having been on the board of a defense company, and he had to get a special waiver to, make him exempt from that law. And so it's interesting that we have somebody, there's a reason why there was a law that people who were recently on the boards of defense companies aren't allowed to be in control of the military. And, maybe you can kind of see the reason that there's that law in place, that there's that distinction, because somehow, coincidentally, less than 3 months after a Raytheon CEO or board member is in control of the U.S. military, we are suddenly giving arms to both sides in a conflict in the Middle East, where we are, now we've done that in the past, but like not this bluntly, this overtly, where we are giving money to Hamas to buy, well, we're giving money to Hamas, not necessarily to buy weapons, but that's what they're doing with it. And
what else are they going to do? Historical evidence shows that they never buy food. They never rebuild their buildings. They just buy missiles.
And then we are also selling weapons to Israel so that they can knock those rockets that we also paid for out of the sky. It seems a little... I don't know what it seems. I don't know what the word... There's not really a good word for it. Because it's so corrupt. Bad. Yes, evil. Corrupt is a word that describes it. I don't know if it's a strong enough word. Yes. Treason?
Oh, so treason actually, it doesn't fit the definition of treason, but because we're not helping our enemy fight us, but it is definitely bad.
No, because we've got. Don't we have a like one of those treaties with Israel where we like have to do stuff?
Yeah, apparently we don't honor it.
Yeah, but in theory, creating a situation in which you're assisting an enemy to attack our ally, and you know that ally has a treaty with us in which we have to defend them, you're intentionally pulling us into conflict.
Okay, that's a good argument.
I will also note that it's also relevant that before being on the board of Raytheon, General Lloyd Austin coordinated the U.S. military operations in Iraq and Afghanistan
for the huge success, right?
Yeah, from like 2013 to 2016, which was really great time. We did we gained a lot of ground during those. What's that? ISIS took over the entire Middle East in less than 4 years. Are you telling me that
we achieved nothing and only lost American lives?
No, I'm telling you that General Lloyd Austin achieved nothing and lost a lot of American lives, and then went on to make millions of dollars in 3 years being on the board of a defense company, and then immediately went back into the U.S. government to control the military once more, and somehow is resulting in needing to buy a lot of weapons.
But Fox, how can General Lloyd Austin, who is highly decorated and also was given a lucrative position on Raytheon's board and then was appointed as the Secretary of Defense, how could he have objectively been a complete failure at his job? I mean, how's that even possible? I'm not saying it. I'm just saying you're saying it.
You're saying it. I will. I do think on the bright side though, Lloyd Austin is proof that there is no systemic racism in America. General Lloyd Austin, among other things, is a black man. Great for him. But if a black man is able to become a general in the U.S. military, corruptly convert that into millions of dollars by working for a defense company, and then from there become again in charge of the military and make decisions that ensure that that defense company has weapons being purchased from it, and is able to sweep up ridiculous amounts of money and power for himself in a corrupt way, and nobody says a thing. If a black man can do that, there is no racism in America. We have achieved peak equality of the races if he's allowed to do that. I don't think that he should be. I don't think anybody should be. But if black people are equally allowed to be as corrupt as humanly possible as white people are, then we have truly reached the future that Dr. King had desired for us.
I'm fairly sure that he got to the position he was in because he's willing to doggedly and with no moral compass do whatever those above him asked him to do without ever pushing back, just doing exactly what they wanted, got him up in the ranks, and he does the same thing for the Democrat Party now. He is executing their will and then making sure he gets his out of it.
Yeah, and I think that we've called out white people who have done this often enough. My only point in notifying that he's black is that if we had a racist infrastructure or institutional racism in this country, there is no way that he would be able to do what he did. There's absolutely not a chance that they would have let him in to that corrupt circle. So, if anybody says there's institutional racism, just point them at Lloyd Austin.
Yep. Even more than Obama.
Triumvirate's pointing out that the Middle East is an extension of the Democrat Coliseum in that it is part of their favorite sport is watching brown people kill each other, just this time in the Middle East. Yeah, they've been playing that game for a lot longer than they've been playing the domestic one.
Yep.
But yeah, they enjoyed it so much abroad, they thought maybe they'd bring it back home. All right, so the aftermath of the most recent outbreak of violence in this never-ending conflict is, as reported by Palestinian sources, 248 dead Palestinians, including 66 children, with more than 1,900 wounded. Not saying like hearing about dead children, that sucks, not good. Wish it didn't happen, but if you're a parent and you don't want your child to be blown up, maybe don't elect a terrorist organization to be your government. Being as Palestinians lie as easily and as often as they breathe, perhaps even more, those numbers could be completely fictitious. However, being as they use children as human shields, they could also be right. It is really impossible to say, and I would even go so far as to add that it's possible that they might have killed some children just to stage it and say, oh, this was an Israeli bomb. Let's see here. It is also estimated that $10 million. That's not very much. They're not $10 million. Jesus Christ. That's only like 3 hours of an Antifa riot. That's not very much. It's estimated that $10 million of damage was done. Yeah, they gotta get those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers. It is kind of comical that the cost of an 11-day continuous bombing campaign by a technologically advanced military did less damage than Antifa did, which managed to rack up a $4 billion damage bill. And the only reason why it was $4 billion is because that was the limit that the insurance companies would pay out. Did you ever watch that Chernobyl miniseries on HBO?
No.
Okay, so there was right after the reactor blows, the head guy is asking what's the rad count, and the guy looks at the rad meter and he goes, oh, it's 3.6 rad. They used a Russian word or whatever for it, but he's like, oh, it's 3.6 rads. He's like, oh, 3.6 rads, it's not good, not bad though. And the guy's like, well, yeah, but like the meter only goes up to 3.6. And he goes, okay, so 3.6 then, not good, not bad. And that's the joke here. It's like, okay, like, well, $4 billion, it's a lot, but it's not too much. It's like, well, $4 billion was the limit to which we could measure. That was as high as it went. So like, it was probably more than that. You just can't measure it.
It is kind of funny though, like, I know they destroyed entire buildings, many of them, but the entire value of everything destroyed in Palestine was only estimated at 10 million, which is just pales in comparison to an Antifa riot. And I guess it means that their infrastructure is just worthless.
Basically. So I was reading the other day too that every Iron Dome counter missile is $100,000, and they're shooting those things off like candy. It's actually, I'm betting that almost every barrage of missiles probably cost Israel at least $10 million, if not more, because they're shooting off tens to hundreds of these counter missiles at a time.
The counter missile costs as much as the most expensive version of the Qassam missile, though the Qassam missiles can also be like 1/10 of that.
Yes. And actually, to go about what I said earlier about, I wouldn't be surprised if Palestine actually did like kill off civilians just to kind of stage that, like, oh no, the Israelis did it. I'm actually remembering now that they do that by accident, because their missiles don't always go up as high as they're supposed to, and so a lot of times they land in Palestinian territory on other Palestinians and blow them up. And Palestine has been pushing off the narrative that these self-targets, friendly fire incidents are Israel blowing up kids. So
they also are being fired off by illiterate retards sometimes that fire them straight off down a street.
Well, I mean, it's not really their fault that they're illiterate. Have you seen what their language looks like? It's just fucking scribbles. All right, so the Israeli military said that an Israeli soldier has been killed, as well as 12 civilians, including 2 children. Hundreds were treated for injuries.
Sure it has. Okay, so the difference in effectiveness does not determine who's the aggressor. Just plain out, it doesn't matter that Israel was able to destroy more enemy targets and was able to kill more enemy fighters. By the way, listed in those dead Palestinians, the vast majority of them are the Hamas fighters. that they're claiming to be victims. Bullshit.
So they don't make a distinction between their civilian population and Hamas, the terrorist organization. And given that the civilians elected Hamas to be their political representatives, I am willing to take them at their word that all the people that died were Palestinian citizens, and that all Palestinian citizens are Hamas. So I'm willing to take them
at the premise.
I will accept their premise.
So when Palestinians attack and rape Jews in the United States because of their proposed actions of Israel, you know who the aggressors are, right? No one looking at the huge upswing in anti-Semitic attacks. In New York alone, there's like a 30% increase in the yearly attacks on Jews in just that 11-day period. You can't claim the Jews are the aggressors when around the world, citizens of those countries who just are Jewish, the religion, not the citizenship, are being attacked by those who claim citizenship of Palestine, right? They just hate Jews. Palestine and Hamas being the same thing, their entire goal is to destroy Israel and kill the Jews. The reason why they exist not as a state but as a controlled territory is they would not accept them becoming a state if it included Israel becoming a state. They wanted it to be completely in control of all the land, and the Jews could never have a homeland because they are their historical enemies.
You know what's funny is I see lots of memes from the left, but yeah, not to the extent that they're memes. But it's funny because the left gets their news from memes. But there was this kind of joking around last week that like, oh, well, Israel didn't want a two-state solution, so now they get a no-state solution, and kind of saying like, you know, Palestine should just railroad them and blow them up. And it's like, I don't think that Israel was the one that was rejecting the two-state solution.
It was the Palestinians.
Yeah, I tried to remember, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't Israel that said no to that for like the last 20 years. I also, we said this last week, and we'll say it again, because Israel is a touchy subject sometimes, and it involves a lot of spending, which we neither of us agree with. And we said last week, and we'll say it again, is fully 100% support Israel's right to defend itself. And that support of Israel's right to defend itself is fully 100% compatible with our second opinion, is that we shouldn't be funding Israel to the extent that we are, because they use a lot of our money for their own social welfare programs, and they're squandering a lot of it. And that's not, I can support Israel's right to defend itself. I don't need to support Israel's universal healthcare system. That's ridiculous. And actually, the led by the Squad, AOC this week, they are trying to block Congress from continuing to fund Israel's Iron Dome missiles, not letting us, they don't want America to be buying those. And you know what? I actually don't disagree with them. I think that Israel has purposefully made itself dependent on U.S. taxpayer money to defend itself. And I think that Israel is fully capable of funding its own defense. And I think that they should not be continuing to be dependent on us, and us continuing to give them that money is only furthering their dependence. It's not healthy for their state to be fully dependent on foreign aid to defend itself.
Here's a hot take. How about we just stop giving Hamas money for missiles, and we stop giving Israel money for missiles?
That's a great hot take. It's compatible with my hot take. So, you know, a little of this, little of that. I think any whatever your views on Israel is, I think that you should be happy with what our views are. But yeah, I heard that, and I hear, it's funny because you got some commentators like Hannity, for instance. Hannity is purely a Democrat's bad. He does not do a lot of deep philosophical thinking. He just whatever the Democrats want, he's the opposite, which is fine. There's a lot of commentators out there to choose from. Some of them are going to be better than others, but that's just Hannity. I'm talking about Hannity right now because he's on when I'm driving home from work, and I caught him yesterday, And he was talking about how AOC was trying to lead this charge, and he was very upset. He's like, no, we need to be sending Israel these missiles. We need to be paying for it. And I'm like, I just, from my concern, you go back to the first conservative principles, and I can't find a way to get myself from first principles all the way out to the idea that I need to be social welfare missiles to foreign countries. I'm not able to make that leap if I go back to first principles, and I don't think that we should be doing it. And obviously, it doesn't take a lot of thought or philosophy to realize, as Dyer said, we should not be sending missiles and social welfare to our enemies.
Yep, it's not that difficult. So another way you can tell who the aggressor in this conflict is
shot first.
Who shot first? That's another great one. But also, if you are a Jew in Palestine, you are thrown from a roof and stoned. You are killed in the streets because they hate Jews. If you are a Muslim in Israel,
it's likely you're part of the government. You might be in parliament.
Yeah, you have equal right, equal protections, and also representation. So you can tell who is the aggressor in who actually tolerates and gives rights to the other group, right? And again, Palestine not being a state is a choice. The Palestinians have refused to accept statehood since the founding of Israel in 1948, because they would not accept statehood if it meant Israel also got to be a state.
Which really pisses me off, because I think it would be deeply hilarious to watch them try to manage a state.
I mean, they are trying to manage their...
I know, right? Like, they're completely incapable of managing themselves at all. So one of the only reasons... So if Israel really, really wanted to wipe Palestine off the map... Israel supplies more than half of the fresh water and electricity to the Gaza Strip, which is where Palestinians are. Water is a hugely scarce resource in that region, and Israel has this mammoth desalination effort that supplies most of their water, where they are boiling seawater out of the Dead Sea to get the fresh water, get the salt out of it, get the fresh water. And they are so generous as to give that to the people that will then turn around after drinking a nice glass of water and fire rockets at them. If Israel really wanted this over, it could be over in 3 days. The ceasefire is kind of ridiculous. The U.S. should not have brokered it. The way Biden's been talking about it is the way the media talks about, or some commentators talk about the Antifa violence is, we need to de-escalate. And we talked about this on the show a few months ago, is like, well, what does it look like for the right to de-escalate with Antifa? Like, the right's not going out and hunting down Antifa. Antifa's coming to find us. De-escalation, the only escalation conservatives have is just defending themselves from, being beaten or ripped out of their car or having their business burned down. Like, de-escalation is merely conservatives not defending themselves.
Yeah.
And the way the Biden administration was talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was that it was this kind of both sidesism where it was like, well, we need to mutually de-escalate. Well, what does it look like for Israel to de-escalate? It looks the only way Israel is able to de-escalate is that they don't fire their Iron Dome and they just let the rockets hit them, which is ridiculous. The U.S. should not have brokered a ceasefire, which I don't think that we actually did. I was kind of surprised to hear an article that we had brokered the ceasefire, because actually the initial article was that Egypt had brokered it, and that I think Biden was just I think this is one of those things where Biden was trying to take credit for it when they weren't really involved.
The article, which I think I've linked down here, definitely said that the White House had done it. So
yeah, so the initial article that I read when it happened was that Egypt had brokered the deal. So I think that this is an example of the Biden administration, the media kind of lying and trying to take credit for it when it wasn't really him. But regardless, Israel should. I don't understand why Israel agreed to this. They really needed to just keep going, because all this is going to do is this is like a ceasefire until the next fire. Like there is nothing was resolved. Hamas and Palestine are going to continue to do this. All this does is gives Hamas time to regroup. When Israel was doing a really good job knocking off their leader list, and Israel just said, you know what, we made so much effort, you did have so many gains this week, we're going to just keep going until there is no more Hamas. For them to stop now, one, as Dyer started off the story, it was just going to end up with another 10 years of back and forth conflict. It's going to end up with more cost to the U.S. In funding both sides. It's really a lot of work for us to fund both sides. I gotta go start working a second job just because I love watching this both sidesism so much, and I need to work a second job to make sure Uncle Sam's got enough money to buy these missiles for both sides. But the idea that they would just agree to that is ridiculous. I'm not going to tell them what to do, but I do think that the Americans have a right to have an opinion on it because we're fucking paying for it. We're paying for the whole thing.
Yep. So, like you said, it's going to just be another cycle of them rebuilding and then attacking another big conflict. And the problem is when you don't actually defeat the enemy and they think that they won the conflict, that Hamas thinks they won, then they're just emboldened to do it again. You need to fight them to the point where they give up. They need to be fully in no dispute defeated if you have any hope of peace. Because if they think that they won and they got over on you and they got you to acquiesce, then they're just delaying the conflict. It means more Israelis will die. There'll be more conflict in the region for a much longer period, probably another 10 years, like I said. Now, as I said before, anti-Semitic incidents have been increasing fivefold in London since 8 May. And the ADL says this week that they found that there's 17,000 tweets between 7 May and 14 May with variations of the words "Hitler was right." I'm glad I said that on YouTube.
Yeah, me too.
The point was that there has been a huge increase of anti-Semitism around the world, but also there's never been more pro-Palestinian sentiment in the U.S. than ever before. This is the most it's ever been, according to one of the articles I read. That they're like, it is strange how the shift in opinion towards supporting Palestine over Israel. I'd say it's probably greatly due to the demonization from the Democrat Party and the embracing of these anti-Semitic radicals on the left, and they're going to blame conservatives, but it has definitely been Palestinians that have been doing these attacks. They've had Palestinians flying Palestinian flags, going through yelling, "Fuck Israel! Death to Israel! Death to Jews!"
Chasing them down in cars and
rape their daughters. Just yelling that out on loudspeaker. Actually going out and beating people in the streets, throwing explosives at them. They actually did. A group of Palestinians did actually rape a Jewish girl in the United States. They have been attacking the Jews. And this is the same group that Democrats support.
Again, to kind of back up your point, on the flip side, like, where is the roving gangs of Jews hunting down Palestinians? Where's the gangs of Jews raping Palestinians and running them over with their cars and shooting weapons at them? It's just not. It's not there.
There's videos of clashes in Israel of Jews versus Muslims, but they are Jews fighting back against armed Palestinians with firearms, shooting at them in the streets. And at that point, you can't say this is a roving gang of Jews. It's a populace defending itself.
Yep.
In any case, I apologize. I do need to make this our last story. Do you have anything else you want to add to it?
How dare you?
The wife opened the door and said she needed my attention.
Yeah,
I can't help
it. I'm sure she did.
Mm-hmm. She did. So, is there anything else for the story?
No, I think that's.
I can promise you there will be more developments in 10 years.
Yeah.
Because it'll still be going on then. But hopefully, you guys, anytime someone says that Israel is the aggressor, throw them all the examples of Palestinians attacking people for being Jews, not Israelis, for being Jews. Tell me, how is this the Jews are the aggressor when they're the ones being attacked around the world? Come on. All right. Thank you, guys. It's been a fun show. It's kind of late. We'll see you guys next week. Direwolf out.
All right. Travis signing off. Thanks, guys.